What's up and welcome back to another live unboxing review with GizmoSlipTech. Today we're taking a look at the Blade 15 live unboxing. This thing is the 2023 version, features an RTX 4060, exceptionally expensive at $24.99. This is not going to be a laptop that a lot of people are going to want to focus on unless you're focusing primarily on ultra portable, ultra premium, and you basically have a fairly high budget, because you're definitely paying about 800, 900 more for this laptop for some of the special features on this guy. So like, especially like the unibody all metal chassis is probably the biggest premium feature you're getting with this thing. You're also getting a vapor chamber cooling, upgraded speakers, a nicer webcam, hopefully with Windows Hello. I don't know exactly how high quality the webcam is yet. I haven't done detailed testing yet on it, but this thing is basically Razer's most portable laptop so far in 2023. You know, last year they had the Blade 14 and then they had the Blade 15 and 17. This year, now they have the Razer Blade 15, 16, and 18. So this is like their most portable version of their gaming laptops in 2023. And this thing still packs a wallop in terms of TDP potential. It should be able to go over 100 watts to the GPU. Don't know exactly how high it's going to max out. In my initial testing, I saw like 100, over 100 for the quick, just making sure everything's running properly. And overall, like, I think this thing has got a tremendous potential for someone that's looking for the ultra premium, ultra high levels of performance in a super portable package. But like I said, it's not really for those people that are looking for the best bang for the buck. So it's really just a very niche market. I feel like this competes very well against something like the Alienware X16 or the Alienware X14. And if you're not on a budget, it'll compete fairly well against the Zephyrus G14 or Stealth 14. Now we do have the Zephyrus G14 and Stealth 14 that I have recently reviewed. So this is like a direct competitor to those ultra premium laptops, because this is going to be in the similar size, a little bit heavier than those laptops, but it's definitely in the same like ballpark of size. So what is up, Ellie? I see you in the chat. Good to see everyone hopping into the live stream. Without further ado, let's go ahead and just get straight into the unboxing for the Blade 15. And we're gonna basically do everything today. Like, just quick overview of what we're gonna do. We're gonna unbox this thing. We're gonna see what comes in the box. We're going to take the bottom off. We're going to examine what is the upgradability of this laptop. We're going to test the display out. We're going to test the speakers out. We're going to test the CPU. We've got the i7 13800H, which is a 14-core, 20-thread processor. And we've got, of course, the RTX 4060. Should, in theory, be up to 140 watt. I don't anticipate actually going up to 140 watt. Probably it'll just be hanging around in the 110, 115 watt range, like we have seen all of the other RTX 4060 laptops. And yeah, it's pretty much maxing the performance of the 4060 at that watt range. And then, of course, we have a QHD 240 hertz display on this guy. So very high quality display as well. It's supposed to be up to 100% Adobe or 100% P3 color gamut. Of course, my Spyder 5 will probably underestimate that by a little bit, but it still should be like excellent overall display. So it's got basically all of the premium features, Windows Hello, a very thin, minimal bezels, very portable. Like it's much thinner than the Blade 16 that we have. I'll have that. We can do side-by-side comparisons with the Blade 16, and that'll probably help you a lot to decide if this thing's actually a bit more portable or not really that much more portable. It's definitely lighter weight, and definitely thinner, but you are giving up some of that performance going with the Blade 15 because it's not as thick, right? So it doesn't get as much thermal headroom. So yeah. What's up, Ninja Warrior and King Dragon Official? Welcome to the stream. Okay, let's get right into it. So the the unboxing camera. Let's back this guy up a little bit. All right, so this is the external box. You may get it shipped to you in this box right here. I'm not sure how Razer's shipping it. I actually had a third layer of box, but this is a review unit sent to me by Razer. So it's not a unit that I bought with my own money. So I will not be reselling this one. But shout out and thank you to Razer for sending that. I always fully disclose everything. This will be sent back to them after I'm done reviewing it. It is not free for me to keep. It's just a review unit. And yeah, so awesome. So inside of this box, we have everything in bubble wrap, basically. So here's the power adapter and power cable. So if we pull this out, you can see that the power cable itself is only about 4 feet long or so. It's not a very long power cable, which is, I think, a little bit of a bummer, personally, because this is, you're going to be very portable focused with this laptop, which means you're probably going to be plugging it in on the go fairly often. And so having a little bit longer power cable, I think, is beneficial to help you reach those hard-to-get wall outlets, but it's not a deal breaker or anything, just pointing that out. We also have the power cable itself. Now, this one is very long. So this one is over 6 feet long. On the length, this seems to be about 6.5 feet long. I do like that at least this one is very long, longer than average. So it helps make up for the shorter power cable. But I wish this was at least 1 foot longer, maybe 2 feet longer, to reach those hard-to-get outlets. Now, the power adapter is, let me just go ahead and show you the details on the power adapter. We've got a 230 watt power adapter, and this is definitely another GAN power adapter. It's smaller, going to be lighter weight, and definitely more portable than your typical 230 watt power adapter. So this is another aspect of what you're paying for with the Blade series. Like, it's definitely an upgraded power adapter. It costs Razer more to make this. I'm guessing between $50 to $100 more in terms of total production resale value increase. So this is one of the premium features. The all aluminum metal feature on the Blade 15, the all aluminum body, and then of course the speakers. The screen is very, very nice. And the vapor chamber cooling and potentially the noise the laptop makes as a whole for the fan noise. Those are probably like the biggest features, the biggest premium features, I would say, that help set the Blade 15 apart from some of the competition out there. That said, let's go ahead and move on to the laptop itself. So you can see the laptop's got this bubble wrap that isolates the laptop from the rest of the box. So in case the main box gets punctured, there's a gap or gets bounced around too much. So let's put these back inside of here, and we'll take this off of the table. All right, so looking down here at the Razer box itself, we've got the Razer logo right here on the side, as well as like the 3 snake logo on the top. I'm spinning it around. You can see that when we open it up, we've got Go Green with Razer, talking about their commitment to sustainability. If you care about that, things, like even the boxes are made with like recyclable stuff, including soy ink. And so here is the Blade 15. Now, of course, I did unbox this guy already just to get all the drivers and everything up to date, install all the games. So this guy is basically fully set up and ready to be benchmarked and tested. But that's pretty much all I did. All right, so there it is. Look at how thin this guy is. It's an exceptionally thin laptop. It reminds me a lot of like a MacBook Pro, for example, right? Like this is very similar in thickness to something like a MacBook Pro. And the power limits are probably going to be pretty competitive with the MacBook Pro in that sense as well, that you're not getting the same level of power limits because of the thinness of the device itself. Now, you can see that me just touching this thing has put some fingerprints on it. So it's definitely not a 100% fingerprint free laptop. You'll have to be microfiber wiping this down, but it is a beautiful finish on here, just like pretty much with all Razer products. They do a really great job with their all metal body. Now you can see on the bottom here we have 2 fan intakes. And this is very important that, like the new Razer Blade 18 has 3 fan intakes, a 3rd fan intake up here. That helps keep the whole chassis a bit cooler. So I would expect that this chassis is going to be, I guess, heating up a little bit more in terms of like its overall airflow and cooling potential. It's obviously going to be a lot lower TDP and wattage going through this machine as well. So we'll have to see how warm it gets and how well Razer has managed to keep this thing balanced, thermally speaking. So let's go ahead and check out the other stuff in the box here as well. So we've got a Razer logo and on this little black slip envelope thing. And let's go ahead and open this up. Says, thank you for choosing a Razer system. The dedication we put into engineering this high-performance laptop extends to our aftercare. We have committed customer support team at your disposal. There is a phone number here. You can use this to contact customer support, which is really nice. I hope that Razer continues to improve their customer support because, in my opinion, it's one of the areas where they've kind of lacked in the past. Like Razer support for such a premium product, the support just doesn't rival the support of something like Apple. And some of the other gaming laptop manufacturers certainly have surpassed Razer in terms of expected performance of their customer support as well. So that's kind of a downside, I think. But no matter what brand out there, there's always going to be lemon laptops. There's always going to be issues that occasionally pop up just through the nature of that there's sometimes manufacturing defects. So when you do end up buying this thing, just know that you want to make sure you test it, I guess. You want to look for any dead pixels in the display. You want to make sure you put the laptop through its paces initially, especially during the initial return period. That's probably my biggest tip for pretty much any gaming laptop that you buy. You definitely want to get it fully tested out and just make sure that it's good to go, because once the laptop is like working properly, it does not usually break down very often, typically speaking, right? So anyway, so congratulations. There's no turning back. Everyone knows that it's not just brute force that wins the battle. It also requires strategy and agility. Yada, yada, yada. You know, they've got a lot of like kind of gamery talk there, talking up the Razer. It's kind of cool that they've got this kind of Razer premium attitude in terms of the marketing. I do like it, but it's also, you know, kind of some marketing BS, you know. So here's a breakdown of all of the ports. We've got our microphone array at the top, webcam, indicator light, full HD webcam, 15.6-inch anti-glare display. We got the per key RGB powered Razer Chroma key, and we got our speakers on the sides. It does have a UHS 2 SD card reader, which is the faster SD card reader, another premium upgrade compared to a lot of the other portable laptops. Like there's the Blade, the G14 and the MSI Stealth 14, you know, they don't have UHS 2 SD card readers on them. So that's another difference, right? All right, so just a basic quick guide setting up your laptop. Plug it in before you power it on, and then of course get logged into Razer Synapse. And that's pretty much everything that's in the pamphlet. And then other sides, they've got some, usually this is in other languages and stuff, but all right, so here is your sticker kit. You can get, you got your Snake logo stickers, Razer Chroma RGB, for gamers, by gamers, and a Razer. So there's 4 different stickers right there. And then you've got a microfiber cloth. You're going to need this to wipe off those fingerprints on the chassis. So it's nice that they include one. I actually really like that they include one. So awesome. So that's everything that's included inside of the packet. Let's move on to opening up the laptop and checking out the inside. All right, so we're gonna open this guy up, and there is a kind of black microfiber cloth across here. It's not quite microfiber, but you know, it's kind of like that packaging cloth to keep everything pristine on the inside. And right there, you can see we've got this beautiful keyboard layout with a speakers flanking on the left and right side that are quite large on the speaker grills. We do have this big sticker here that's basically indicating the specs of the laptop. I'll kind of zoom in on it here so you can kind of see it. See if I can get it to focus. There we go. So it's got a, let's see, like that. Is that good? Okay, yeah, basically right there. RTX 4060 with 8 gigs of VRAM, and I think that is one of the biggest concerns that you should have going into this purchase. If you get the Blade 15, you can get it with the RTX 4060 or 4070. I'm not sure if they'll offer a 4050 option, but only having 8 gigs of VRAM and this being a QHD display on here, you are going to run into VRAM limitations, which could be a big bottleneck in certain titles. It may require you to turn textures down to low, and eventually maybe some games just won't be able to support QHD resolution, especially at native res, and you might end up having to down the res or using DLSS to reduce the render resolution to below that native QHD resolution. Usually, right now, like 99% of games are just fine, but there are a handful of them right now that even struggle with 8 gigs of VRAM in QHD especially. Full HD, 8 gigs of VRAM is almost always enough. So I'm pretty sure you could still downsample this down to 1080p in a couple of those titles that really need it. But the vast majority of games are still going to be fine right now at QHD, especially if you're willing to tweak the settings in the more select titles that are very VRAM demanding. But it does kind of suck that you don't just go into any game you want and you'll be able to load in without and have a stutter-free experience. When you run out of VRAM, you basically get some stutters. I'm sure we'll see some of that today in our game testing when we get to it. Now, we also have an 13th gen i7-13800H with 14 cores and 20 threads. Now, this is the first time I'll be testing the i7-13800H, so this is going to be very interesting to see the performance levels of this CPU versus all the other laptops and CPUs out there, because at this price point, you definitely could be getting an i9 13980HX in some of the other laptops, or very close to that, depending on how the GPU is paired. So you're definitely making a big trade-off going for this i7-13800H, and really that trade-off is all of the premium features, once again, versus the competition. So it's up to you whether it's worth it. For me, I'm pretty much on the fence, but I'm going to kind of give you my total opinion at the end. We'll have to see, I guess, how this performs. Especially, I'm very curious how the temperatures on this are and all of that. But you can see right here, it says with vapor chamber cooling, and we're going to take a look at that when we open the bottom up and see how the vapor chamber cooling is set up, especially with all the upgrades. All right. So checking out chat. What's the TGP of this one? It should, in theory, it's supposed to be rated to 140, but it's probably not going to go to 140. Does this have an OLED screen? No OLED screen. As far as I know, it is just a QHD. I can show you the sticker for the screen right here. It's a QHD 240 Hertz 2560 by 1440 ultra fast refresh rate, and it is a very vibrant screen. It's supposed to be rated for 100% P3 color gamut. We'll have to see what we get in our display test today, but it should be an excellent gaming display, and I did use it in a very bright environment, and you could easily see this laptop display in basically a very daylight-ish environment. So the display is certainly a high-quality display on this unit. We'll have to see how it actually holds up versus the competition, but you're certainly not lacking on the display section. Now, looking down here at the layout of the keyboard and trackpad, so we have the traditional keyboard layout with all of the secondary functions going along the top, and we have a touchpad here. This is a nice size touchpad, but note that it is not as big as the Blade 16 or 18 touchpads. Those touchpads are a bit wider and maybe even a little bit taller as well. That said, this touchpad's exceptionally large, a very nice touchpad for this laptop size. And it does feel very good glass precision touchpad. The click is also, I think, honestly, a little bit better than my Blade 18 click. Yeah, my Blade 18 click feels a little bit more mushy. This one feels a little bit more tactile. I don't know. When they redesigned them in 2023, I think this version of the Blade actually has the slightly better touchpad. That's a massive L from Razer. No OLED screen. Now, I don't know if there's another version of this that has a OLED screen or not. I don't think so, but I'm going to pop over to their website real quick. And let me pull this up right here. Okay, and do this and get this set up. All right, and I believe that's it. There we go. All right, so this is the Blade 15 specs page. And so you can get ultra portable, incredibly light, 4.4 pounds, up to RTX 4070 with 125 watt TGP, which is basically the max wattage for a 4070 or 4060. 13th gen i7 processors, QHD 240 Hz display, G-Sync ready, 100% DCI P3 color gamut. And yeah, so the biggest difference between, so you can see the 2022 version versus the 2023 version. The 2022 version, you can get up to a 3080 Ti laptop. And I want to mention that the RTX 3050 Ti version, I believe, is on sale right now, which is a pretty nice, it's a pretty nice setup still. You can get up to you can get a full HD 360 Hz display, QHD 240 Hz with G-Sync, or OLED, or a 4K 144 Hz. So you have three different display options for the 2022 version, and the ability to get a 3080 Ti also could be a nice upside as well. So here are the actual options if you were to try to buy this. So here is this is the 2022 version. Let's just explore that for a second. So the 3080 Ti version of the 2022 version is going to cost the same price as this unit at $24.99. So you can basically choose between the 4060 version or the 3080 Ti version. Now if you get the QHD 240 Hz, it's still the same price, interestingly enough. 32 gigs of RAM, no Razer care. Yeah, all right. So that's pretty interesting. So it's still the same price, and right now it's a big sale. It used to be $36.99. So those are temporarily on sale. And picking between a 3080 Ti and a 4060 in this form factor, I'm pretty sure a 3080 Ti would still outperform the 4060 in raw rasterization. But the main advantage with the 4000 series, of course, is frame generation. Now, I did not see any OLED display options in here. So currently, as far as I can tell, there is basically no OLED display options available anymore for 2022 or 2023, at least in here. So going with the most expensive i9 version, do you have OLED? So here is the OLED options right here. So if you want the, so if you want the OLED, you have to get a 3070 Ti with QHD 240 Hz OLED. So that's a huge sacrifice, in my opinion, going to go with that OLED, but you could go down that road and not necessarily regret it if you're really after an OLED display. The OLED's going to have better contrast and potentially better brightness, but we'll have to test this display that we have on our unit here. Now, let's go ahead and configure this unit as we are reviewing it today. So that is this unit right here. This is the RTX 4060. For $300 more, you can get a 4070 version, QHD 240 Hz. Of course, it's like an IPS type display. It's not an OLED type display, and then in some ways that's going to be a disadvantage. But these kinds of displays are still really, really nice in my opinion, and it's not necessarily a deal breaker in my opinion if you were to end up going with a non-OLED display. Now, of course, the OLED 240 Hz does help set apart the 2022 version. It would be cool if we see more OLED options in the future. It's just, I think OLED displays are a lot harder to manufacture and to produce in a higher volume and quantity. That's why they became temporarily available, and then the manufacturers, I think, were just like, part availability is too minimal, so they ended up ditching it in 2023 pretty much. So anyway, getting back into our unboxing, that's the configuration. It's $24.99 for this laptop that we've got before us, which is, I think, a pretty strong, steep ask. Anyway, so let's go ahead and I'm going to focus on the questions again for another moment. Okay. The G14 has better build quality. That's King Dragon says that. I would say no. The G14 is going to have more flex in like the keyboard and chassis area. It's also got a lot more plastic on it. And so in terms of overall rigidity, the Blade 15, I think, is better. It's also, the Blade 15, I believe, is also thinner, but it also weighs more. The metal makes it heavier. So to me, I think the Blade 15 versus the G14 in terms of build quality and like rigidity and all of that, the Blade 15 has the advantage for the rigidity, but because of the all metal chassis, it's just that the weight is, it's going to be a bit of a downside, because when you're buying an ultra portable laptop, that's a huge part of your focus, is trying to get something as lightweight as possible. That said, the G14 is not bad build quality. I think it's very good. So it's not like it's a huge difference going between like this metal chassis and the Blade, the G14. I don't know. I think that they both have they're both tremendous laptops, but it's like an all metal chassis is going to cater to a different type of user than the plasticky chassis on the G14, right? So, okay. Does the RTX 3060 laptop with 140 watts gives higher performance than a 4060 with only 80 watts of power? So a 3060 with 140 watts versus a 4060 with only 80 watts of power? That's a great question, Eli, I believe is how you say your name. The power will affect it significantly. I don't know if it's going to affect it significantly enough to make the 3060 more powerful. It's going to bring it to be a lot closer. I guarantee you that. I think the 4060 might still barely outperform the 3060. But especially in ray tracing titles, you're going to get more of an advantage with the 4000 series because of the new Ada architecture. And of course, in frame generation titles too, you're going to see a huge FPS boost from frame gen, and that does make certain games go from unplayable to playable. So overall, if the 3060 is dramatically cheaper, it may present a better value option. But if they're the same price, going with the 4060 will deliver more frames per second in especially newer titles that have all of the latest technology from NVIDIA. But if you don't play those games, then it's not really relevant to you as a person. So it may not be worth going with the 4000 series in that scenario. So let's go ahead and get this bottom of the chassis taken off. And we'll also get the laptop plugged in. I'll just put this over here. We won't plug it in just yet, but just gonna put that over there. All right, so let's go ahead and take the bottom of the chassis off. All right, so there's the bottom of the chassis right there. All right, and Nabil says 3070 Ti, full TDP versus 4060, 140 watt. In terms of raw rasterization, I would expect the 3070 Ti to come out a little bit ahead, but not, of course, in the frame generation games. You still have a nice advantage for the RTX 4060. It'd be enough to kind of pull out a win in those titles in terms of like overall gaming experience. Let me see. Looks like this is a T6. I'm guessing this is a T5. All right, so yeah, this is a T5 screws. So you're gonna want to have some kind of toolkit. This is the toolkit I'm using. It's the iFixit toolkit. It's got all kinds of additional upgrades in terms of opening the laptops up with prying tools and tons of different heads, and including a T5 and a magnetic rotating screwdriver that makes things just way easier when you open laptops up. So if you end up opening your laptop up regularly, I do recommend it. Brian says, you've been gone for so long waiting for more reviews. Yeah, sorry guys. I meant to, I've been meaning to stream. I just keep running into bottlenecks or issues with the videos and streams that I plan on doing. The Legion Pro 7i tweaking videos, one that I've been meaning to do for a little while now, for like 2 weeks. But I keep running into driver issues preventing me from figuring out how to get the best optimization. And I don't want to do the live stream until I've got all of the best tweaks for it. So there's been quite a few hours figuring that out. And then the triple monitor setup video has been taking a lot of hours as well. And I really want to test all the games before I do go live with them. So some of these like troubleshooting live streams that I want to do are just really difficult to pull off until you've got everything, all your ducks in a row. So that's why I ended up doing this one, because it's just a bit easier doing the unboxing videos. So I'm not sure if I'm going to need, looks like I probably will need like a toothpick or something, like a guitar pick style. Let's go ahead and let me rotate the camera. So Into the AM have awesome shirts. There's a link in the description down below if you want to check them out. There's a coupon code on that link as well that gives you 10% off of anything you order. So I believe there's just 6 screws. Is that right? This thing's coming up. This is one of the easiest laptops to open so far in 2023. Maybe the easiest. Unless there's some screws here that I'm missing. Because it looks like it's not coming up yet. Is there a screw underneath this rubber foot? I might need to slide this back. Trying to get this thing open. Alright, so let me see if this rubber foot comes up at all. It appears to be like kind of stuck down. Maybe I need to pull it back. Or maybe slide it forward. Yeah, so that's what you got to do. You just got to slide it. You just got to slide it forward towards the front of the laptop. It's got a sealing lip along the back here. So now that we got this up, let's go ahead and replace this. There are only 6 screws on this guy. I love that. It's really awesome that this is one of the fewest screws that, to be honest with you, to take the bottom of the laptop off that I've seen so far in 2023, which just makes it a lot easier to get in here and do some upgrades if you need to. Now, let's see what we got going on. Okay, so our vapor chamber's up here at the top, and we've got 2 fairly decent sized fans. You know, especially for, you know, a laptop of this size and thinness, these are good sized fans. They've really focused on the cooling of this device. We've got our right and left speakers here. You know, those are kind of underneath the speaker grills there. We've got our battery here, and it is a 80 watt hour rechargeable lithium ion battery. And of course, Razer has increased the battery warranty of their new products. I believe they extended the battery to a 2-year warranty from a 1-year because of the previous Razer laptops that had battery bloating issues. So it's nice to see that Razer has went ahead and done that. Of course, they say they've addressed the problem with the battery bloating issue and that it should not affect the new units anyway, but just in case, they've increased the warranty. We'll have to see as time goes on if that's an issue. My Blade 18, no issues with the battery bloating at all or anything like that so far. Now, taking a look here, looks like this is our memory stick right here. And this is our other memory stick. So we do have 2 SODIMMs on the motherboard here. They're upgradable, but it looks like you got to deal with this flap right here if you want to be able to do any upgrades to your memory. Taking a look at the memory stick itself, it looks like it's an SK Hynix. I'll rotate this around so you can see the memory. All right, let's just take the memory out. I think that's going to be our best bet. Okay. All right, so gently lifting that up. So you can see both RAM sticks right there. Pushing down on the memory stick and opening it up. There it is, gives us our memory. All right, so you can see that it's actually, this RAM is actually a 8 gig 1RX16 PC5 5600. But because we have an i7 13800H, I believe it only goes up to 5200 because of chipset limitations with the processor. So if you want to get up to the full 5600 or even higher, you have to have the i9 chip, as far as I know. Pretty sure that's the way it is, at least listed on Razer's technical specs and on Intel's tech specs. So reseating the RAM back in there. There we go. And we'll gently push that back down. So we also have our SSD right here. Looks like we have to have a Phillips head screwdriver to access that. I believe we have 2 SSD slots there. Maybe not, but maybe. No, it looks like we have 2. It's hard to tell initially that there's 2 there, but looks like they stack on top of one another. And since they stack on top of one another, I'm predicting that they're going to be single-sided only on the SSD sizing. So that's going to limit how big of SSDs you can put in. But let's go ahead and try to lift this up if I can. I'm going to use the prying tool. There we go. Oh, looks like there's another SSD. There's another screw here. That's why it's not coming up. So there's a third SSD screw that keeps this black metal shroud down. There we go. Bingo. All right, so yeah, we do have 2 SSD locations here. So our default SSD that it comes with out of the box, let's go ahead and just take that out and take a quick look. There we go. All right, so it's a 1 terabyte SSD. I do know that. Capacity 1 terabyte. No warranty if label removed. Looking for the brand on here. It looks like it's Kio Exia, Europe, Gimby. Yeah, I've never heard of that brand. Interesting. But do note that this is a single-sided SSD. So dual-sided SSDs are thicker, and you're definitely not going to be able to use a dual-sided SSD in this scenario, because this is like the bottom of the SSD is against the bottom of the chassis. So do keep that in mind. Did you fix the GE, Britt Allen? Yes, I did. It's in the garage, ready to be reviewed. So that's going to be one of the laptops that I'll be testing here soon. All right, we're ready to put this back together. We'll start with this screw. We're just going to replace the screws in the same order that we had taken them off of the system. I think this SSD design is ingenious from Razer in that they're going to be able to put two SSDs in a spot that most laptops would only put one. And this right here is another premium feature that you're getting when you get a Blade 15 compared to the competition. Now, the downside here, in my opinion, is that you can't do the double-sided SSDs. And so if you were going to do two 1 terabytes or two 2 terabytes or two 4 terabyte SSDs that are all single-sided, that's fine. But like I use two 8 terabytes that are SSDs that are both double-sided. So my SSDs would not fit inside of this laptop. That's a downside also of getting a thinner overall system. So taking a look at our cooling system setup, we've got our GPU and our CPU, and it's all inside of this vapor chamber cooling, and your exhaust fins are on the rear of the laptop right here and right here. And so all of the hot air from this system is going to be blown out the system, and in the back, it's going to bounce off of the display, off the laptop display. And that's going to be something that, as far as we know, doesn't damage the laptop display. But basically, I guess my primary concern for the cooling system is mainly that there's no way to move the air on this part, most of the laptop. And a lot of the thinner and lighter laptops, for this reason, they tend to get a lot warmer on the WASD keys or even the wrist rests because there's no cooling for that area of the laptop. Like the newer laptops in 2023, a lot of them have a third or even 4 fans, and one of those is like a chassis fan. So that's kind of a downside, in my opinion, for this laptop, is that the overall chassis I'm anticipating is going to get very warm when you're using it for big, heavy gaming loads. All right, so putting this laptop cover back on. Let's go ahead and just go through that. So I'm going to put it down, and you got to make sure you're not putting it straight down. You got to kind of like leave a little bit of edge in the front so that you can wedge it into the back over here. All right, and so once it's there, you kind of slide it up and in. Let me rotate the camera here so you can kind of see it. So yeah, so if you're going to take it off, you got to pull it kind of down a little bit and then up. But when you're putting it in, you got to push it down and then back. We're pretty much snapped in. I kind of heard them kind of snap in. And when you're checking this, the most important thing then is that there's no gaps along here. That's what you really want to look for, is look for any gaps along here. If there's no gaps, then you've been, you kind of snapped everything back together correctly again, and you should be good to go. So let's go ahead and get this thing all screwed back together. So again, we have to switch back to our T5 screw. Bada bing, bada boom. Okay, so King Dragon asks which GE. It's the GE78 with an RTX 4080. I did an initial unboxing review kind of it, but I didn't do all as much detailed benchmarking. I only did like a handful of games. So we're gonna do a kind of a revisiting the GE78, which it's kind of interesting that GE78 that I had was actually the fastest i9 processor that I've tested so far, getting over 36,000 in Cinebench R23. So I'm pretty excited to test it again and kind of put it through its paces and see its performance level. Basically, that GE78 had basically won the silicon lottery is the way I would describe it. Got really lucky with that. Crest of Honor says, I would consider Razer if they were $500 to $1,000 cheaper. Yeah, well, right now, the nice thing is the 2022 models are on sale. Like almost all of them are on sale, like for about between $700 and to $1,200 off of their normal pricing. But you know, when you get an older model, you're also not going to have the same upgraded components like the upgraded CPU, the faster RAM, and of course, the new RTX 4000 series. So that may be a big deal breaker for, you know, people that are wanting to get the most performance. That said, the 2022 model does have an OLED display option, so there is some advantages there, right? Okay, so we are good to boot this guy up now. And I'm also going to show you Windows Hello as we get into Windows here. So I've already set up my face for the Windows Hello screen unlocking. Let's see if it recognizes me right off the bat. It should. Oh, I also want to compare, I guess before I'll let it get into Windows and then we'll do some comparisons. I want to do some comparisons with the Blade 16 and some of the other laptops out there. Okay, so there it is. It found me, it logged me in very quickly. I like that, that's very good. Let's go ahead and we're gonna go ahead and do some size comparisons now between the Blade 16, the G14, and I could also go grab the Stealth 14 as well, because those are the kind of like the three most portable laptops. I guess the Blade 15, Stealth 14, and G14 are the three most portable laptops, in my opinion, that are like really worthy to consider. So G14. All right, so G14, Razer Blade 16. All right, and then we've got the Stealth 14 right there. Okay, so let's compare these one at a time. All right, so let's do G14 versus Blade 15. Wow, that's a bigger size difference than I had anticipated. You know, it's like probably 1.5 inches wider. And yeah, these are lined up pretty well, and about a 1/2 inch shallower as well. Taking a look at the thickness level, you can see the Blade 14 is quite a bit thicker. Let me see if I can get a better light down here. So you can see that the Blade 15 is quite a bit thinner than the Zephyrus G14. The G14 having, I don't know, another, especially on the back here, I don't know, another 0.2 of an inch thicker back here. It's going to be pretty noticeably thinner on the Blade 15. But that said, the G14 is, the smaller footprint will definitely give an advantage to the G14 in terms of portability. Taking a look at the Stealth 14 now. The Stealth 14 is actually deeper. Whoa, interesting. So the Stealth 14, kind of sticks out a bit at the end, and it's actually a deeper laptop. This is, of course, being a 16:10 aspect ratio laptop instead of 16:9 on the Blade 15. But that is a huge chunk in terms of width. The Blade 15 is noticeably wider than both the G14 and Stealth 14, which makes sense, So if I were to lay these three on top of each other, let's see here. Yeah, it's something like that. All right. And if you were to see the thickness level of each of these, it would look like that. Looks like the Stealth is probably the thickest, at least when you count the rubber feet. Account for the rubber feet as well. That said, the Stealth and G14 are definitely the two lighter options, being a little over 3 pounds on both of those. Okay, and last up we have the Blade 16. Now, the Blade 16 is going to be noticeably thicker than the Blade 15. All right, so we are now lined up on the back end and the sides. So take a look at that. The Blade 15 is just much thinner. That's probably the biggest difference between the Blade 15 and Blade 16. And I guess my initial thoughts in terms of which of these two laptops would I consider, two biggest things between these two laptops are going to be screen quality. The Blade 16 having the new mini LED display that can do 4K or drop down to 1080p 240 hertz. So 4K 120 hertz or 1080p 240 hertz. And then, the Blade 15 does not have that option. So no mini LED display, which means it's not going to be as brighter, not it's going to be as contrasty. And then the other big thing that gives kind of an advantage to the Blade 15 is that if you're gonna go for an RTX 4060 or 4070, there's not going to be much of a power difference between the Blade 15 and 16 because they can both reach the peak of the RTX 4060 or 4070 performance curve at like 125 watts. So basically, there's not going to be too much of a difference in terms of GPU performance. But if you're going to try to go for an even more expensive version of the Blade series, the Blade 16 is going to be able to go to that 175 watt TDP because it's so much thicker. It's got beefier cooling, which is a big difference if you're looking for the ultimate level of performance in, say, an RTX 4080 or 4090. So if you're going to go with a 4080 or 4090 laptop, you're going to spend $4,000 or whatever you're going to spend. Then yeah, I would definitely say that the Blade 16 would be the way to go. But if you're looking at like the Blade 16 4060 or 4070 versions, I think the Blade 15 may be more advantageous because you're getting the same performance in a much thinner overall package. And you can see the port selection is identical to both of these laptops on the sides. Like it's like the same number of ports, the same exact ports. It's just the Blade 15, is going to be not as deep of a chassis width. So that's probably that's the main difference in size. Is the thickness, the weight, and then how deep the laptop is. So it is a noticeable difference in size. And if you're going to be packing this every day in a backpack, the Blade 15 will be noticeably lighter and more portable. That said, the Blade 16 is still pretty dang portable, considering that it can have a 4080 or 4090 laptop GPU, which is just another performance class, so like basically doubling the performance of the 4060 or 4070, and sometimes doubling the price as well. at the same time. Okay, so let me grab the Blade 15. Now that we've done all those size comparisons and broke this thing down, let's go ahead and get into some display testing and testing the speakers next. All right. Beautiful. You know, the initial impressions of this laptop display is that it's very good. You know, being an IPS panel, it's not going to be as bright, but it is very colorful, and it is very bright, and it is very vibrant. Like it's noticeably an excellent display off of initial impressions. All right, so beautiful, beautiful. Let's go ahead and move this back. Let's go ahead and I'm gonna go get the camera. Let's test the camera, the webcam out. Okay, so right there, I can tell the camera has about average level of, I guess, color replication. It's not bad. It's not great. It's detail. It's a bit noisy. And, you know, I'm in a fairly well lit environment, and it's still got a lot of noise to the image. So I would say it's not necessarily the worst webcam I've tried, but it's definitely not as good as the Blade 18 webcam, for example. So take a couple photos, and then let's take a look at the photos kind of in detail. I'll zoom in on them here so you can get a better idea. It's, you know, this is definitely above average. It's not like the lower quality webcams like we've seen on, say, the GT77 or some of the other laptops out there, but this thing is certainly not the best webcam either. It's a nice middle ground, I guess is what I would say. Okay. All right. So that's the webcam test. Let me do another, like, just some quick tests of Windows Hello. So you can see how fast it's getting. It's very fast with the login. And now let's go ahead and do our speaker test, and then we'll move into our display test. So we're going to move back. All right, so we're going to start out with Peter Spacey Roar. And guess what I've got, guys? I've got the sound meter today. So we're actually going to be able to tell how loud the speakers get with decibels today. And we'll be able to also do that with the fan noise as well. Though we do have kind of my fans going on my Blade 18. I'm not sure if I'll be able to quiet them down enough. Let me see. Let's try just auto. Maybe that'll make it a little quieter. Okay. All right. So we'll back this up a little bit. All right, and we'll zoom it in. The ambient audio in the room is 41 decibels approximately. We have our audio set to max. All right, and let me make sure the audio in here is set to max. It is. Okay, so first up we have Peter Spacey Roar. Looks like our battery may be dead on our decibel meter. It's a 9 volt What? Do I have any 9 volts? Okay. Let me see if I got some 9 volt here. Hold on. All right, well, so I don't have any other 9 volts as far as I know. So we're gonna have to just use this a little bit. Maybe it'll come back on for a minute, enough to, in the middle of the test, to get a kind of a peak audio range. We'll see. All right. So here we go. Peter Spacey Roar. And 3, 2, 1. Overall, very impressive level of bass and pretty decent mids and highs. It wasn't necessarily amazing. I think the clarity could have been better, but the bass was pretty punchy, which is good. That said, I'm curious if there is any audio adjustment apps in here. I believe there might be. Usually Razer has some audio adjustment apps. I might have to. Let's go into system. Not sure. I think there is a, I'm pretty sure there is a audio system driver. Can't remember. Let's see here. What do I have on mine? No, I don't know. I don't think that there's. Yeah, as far as I know, I think we're good for this audio test for now. There may be a tweaking app that's part of like the Razer Chroma Studio or something. But yeah. THX audio. THX audio for PCs. Okay, that may be it. Okay, there it is. Cool. So if I zoom in on that, this is, oh, you can see the nice backlight on that keyboard right now. All right, so tilt it down right there. Okay, so you can see it pretty well, I think. So we have music, cinema, game, voice, and custom. And volume leveling is enabled. If I disable volume leveling, let's try listening to that again one more time. turning on volume leveling. So this is interesting. So you can turn on volume leveling, and then you can also turn it up so that it pushes all of the volume up to the peak. I just went ahead and did that. I think it got a bit louder. Let me try this thing one more time. Okay, so I think that's probably the best options right there. And so inside of the THX program, right now it's custom with a flat, and I did volume leveling enabled. I'll set all the way to the max. I think that's what sounded the best after I tested each of the settings. Let's move on to Faded Aeon Half-Life. It definitely got noticeably louder when I raised the total volume and the volume leveling. And it seemed like it was more balanced overall as well. Like when it was only part of the way up, it just didn't feel as balanced to me audio-wise. Very nice. Moving on to Deuce Williams, La La La, Love You Like. Okay, so I think overall it's a very good audio system. I think it's not as good as the Blade 18. The Blade 16 is very similar to this one. I think the 16, the new 16, is just a little bit better. Not massively, just a tiny bit better. And the Blade 18 is noticeably better, but not massively so. I would say this is... I feel like the biggest thing was like the crispness of like the mids and highs. And even the bass wasn't as pronounced as like the Blade 18 or some of the highest end laptops. I'd probably give this like an 8.6, 8.75, right in that ballpark of overall rating for audio quality. It's certainly very good. It's certainly above average. And it certainly is better than the vast majority of portable gaming laptops out there. Most of the portable gaming laptops, the first thing on the chopping block is the speaker system. And this one certainly has better speakers than the average. Now I'm gonna go and turn the brightness of the display up to maximum. And we're gonna do our display test, backlight, bleed test, and then some HDR video examples. So let me grab the Spyder 5 Elite. Where did you go? Are you in here? There it is. Okay. It was underneath that box. Okay. ZenBook 14. You guys keep mentioning it, and you guys have made me curious enough to actually ask Asus to send me one. mainly because it's got a 4070 with an OLED display. And, you know, it's such a portable form factor. So, okay. So, moving on, we're going to open up the Spyder software and see how many nits brightness this display is. I'm thinking it's at least 400 is what I'm thinking, because it seems very bright to my eyes. But it also could be, you know, sometimes it's hard to actually estimate just with your eyes. Loading up the code. All right, so I got to type in my serial code here for the software. There we go. Bingo. All right, and all right, our brightness is up to maximum. Go. Bingo. All right, so as I always mention with my Spyder 5 Elite, it does a great job of testing, I think, the overall brightness and the contrast, but sometimes I think it tests underrepresents the Adobe RGB and P3 color gamut and sRGB by like 7 to 8%, somewhere in that range. So even though this is rated for 100% P3 color gamut, we may get like 90 to 94% of the P3 color gamut. We'll have to see. All right, so we're gonna set this down to 0 brightness. We're gonna hit measure. That is very dark overall. What's up, Lance? Welcome to the stream. Crest of Honor asks, how do you feel about the Mercury Razer Blade 16 and 18? I think the Mercury options are awesome. I definitely would have gotten the Mercury option if it had been available when I bought my laptop. I think I would have bought the Mercury option. But, you know, I think at the same time, Mercury is probably going to be less desirable in the long haul because it's more likely to get discolored, I believe, and maybe show, I don't know about showing blemishes. In some ways it might not show scratches and fingerprints as much, which is nice, but then you know, I think it's more likely to show, like, you know, if you're like use the laptop a lot, like your finger oil, you know, the oil on off your fingers goes onto the white and then kind of makes it more likely for it to go kind of brownish, you know, or the wrist rests are, or maybe the finger touchpad. I've had a couple of white laptops in the past where that's happened. It's just something to keep in mind and motivate you, I guess, to wipe it down every now and then with alcohol or something. I don't know. Okay. We are done with the test. Let's see what we got. All right, so there's our test results. We got 100% of the sRGB color gamut, because, you know, typically when you're reaching up to 100% of the P3 color gamut, you go over the 100% of sRGB because it's like a narrower band. Then we've got 88% Adobe and 92% of the P3 color gamut. So when factoring in my Spyder 5 Elite, slightly lower color gamut sensitivity or whatever you want to call it, it's very close to 100% P3 color gamut, which is excellent. Looks like our brightness really is only 292 nits. This is surprising to me because it seems brighter. Anyway, 300 nits as King Dragon said 300 nits was what he expected it to be, and that's actually what it turned out to be. 292 nits. 300 nits is still good enough in the vast majority of circumstances, good enough to see it in a brightly lit environment, though in direct sunlight you're going to struggle to see it, which gives a big advantage, I guess, to some of the other laptops. And that makes a big difference between, like, say, getting the OLED display and this display. You know, like if you end up going with the Blade 15 OLED, which costs a little bit more than this one, $200 more, I believe, you know, that's going to be maybe $300 more, but it has a downgraded GPU and older CPU and other, you know, it's a different system. You know, that thing's going to be brighter. The G14 is also going to have a brighter display, more contrasty, especially if you get the mini LED version of the G14. And at this price point, at $24.99, you could probably get like the RTX 4080 version of the G14. So, and that's going to be a lot more powerful of a GPU with more VRAM. That's a pretty attractive offering compared to this in terms of raw performance per dollar. So like, and you know, like I said, and that one's also going to have the mini LED display, which is going to be like 600 nits brightness and be more like, it's going to be the same level of color gamut, I guess. And in terms of contrast ratio, we got 960 to 1, which that's kind of a little bit above average, but pretty close to the average for what we've been seeing. We've been seeing a lot of like 800 to 850 to 900 range, and the better laptops being over 1,000. So that's like maybe like just basically average or slightly above average in terms of contrast. So overall, this display is very colorful. I kind of wish it was brighter. Especially if you're going to use this in a portable scenario and you're constantly traveling with it. That said, most people using this display are going to be very happy. And it's not like they're going to be super disappointed by this display. But if you're like a designer, which, you know, if you think about it, a lot of the Blade 15 owners are going to be like video editors, photoshoppers, graphic designers. You're really looking for more like, at least in 2023, a lot of the competition is 500 nits with a mini LED, you know, like those two things put together for contrast ratio and brightness is going to give you a big advantage. So yeah. So those are my thoughts on the display. Let's talk Synapse, which is the control software. Oh, wait. We got to do a couple other examples real quick of the display. So let's open up our Backlight bleed photo and also do our HDR video test. So here's our black image. We have to turn some stuff off back here for the backlight bleed test. Go. All right, and we'll go ahead and make this full size. There we go. We'll turn this off. And we can also take a look at the keyboard backlight while we got this all turned off as well. So I think you guys can see it. Let me tilt it down. I'll zoom out just a little bit more. There we go. And I suppose I should probably also turn the brightness on the keyboard backlight down. So there's some backlight bleed in the lower right section, upper left, a little bit in the top right. It's not terrible to my eyes. The camera is definitely picking it up a bit more than my eyesight, but I think this one in the bottom right is definitely going to be noticeable for me. That said, I would say most backlight bleed scenarios are going to be, most backlight bleed scenarios are primarily going to be in dark video games or darker movies is when you're going to notice it the most. And I would say that I would probably notice it a little bit on this display if I was using it. And the main thing I was going to say is that the blacklight bleed will vary from unit to unit. So just because mine is this good doesn't mean that yours won't be worse or quite a bit better. I feel like this backlight bleed is probably a little bit below average in terms of backlight bleed quality. Let's go ahead and move on to our 4K OLED. Hey, there we are. That's hilarious. That's us. There's 70 people watching right now. Okay. Okay, so here is our... I'm gonna up the resolution to 4K. Okay. So here's the image. And, you know, this is really strong colors coming through here. It's extremely vibrant to my eyes. I'm not noticing anything really with the backlight bleed, maybe a little in the corners here. But in terms of watching movies and enjoying video content on this display, I think most people are going to still really, really like this display. It's just, it kind of only is a little bit lackluster when you compare it to the competition in 2023. Like, this is an excellent display for 2022. In 2023, it's just kind of like, yeah, it's pretty good, but it's not like as good as the best, you know? I really like it overall. And I think I would be pretty happy with this display. I would say I just wish it would go to at least 400 nits. That's probably the biggest thing that I would say in terms of like how they could have improved it or made it better. But I'm pretty sure that what we're dealing with is this is the display that was available in 2022 and it's carried forward into 2023. So that's basically, this is what their options were like. All right, so we're moving into, well, I was going to show you the keyboard backlight, but you've pretty much all seen the Razer keyboard backlight on a bunch of other tests and laptop videos I've done. Let me just show you guys. It's extremely bright and extremely vibrant on the backlight, on the keyboard backlight. See if I turn this down, turn this off. I'm not sure how well that's coming through. I probably gotta, like, the Razer keyboard backlight is some of the brightest, best quality keyboard backlight that you're gonna get in any keyboard. And it's just not coming through on my, because everything is so dark around the keyboard. But yeah, it kind of comes through a bit better when I unfocus it, which is really funny. But it is what it is. Overall, the keyboard backlight, it works well. All the secondary functions are lit up. And the biggest thing about the keyboard is that it does have the ability in the Synapse software to showcase or to basically switch the secondary keys to be the primary keys, like the F1 for the volume down button. Let's see if I can get it to focus a little bit better. There we go. So we have the mute button right here. Actually, I'm going to try to get it a little bit closer still, and down. There we go. Okay. There. So, it's still not really wanting to focus very well for me. Well, yeah. I guess it's probably because it's so bright. I'm trying to turn the brightness down a little bit. I guess that helps a little. So you have your mute button, volume up, down, display switch, rewind song, pause play, forward song, brightness. We're going to the right a little bit. You have your brightness down, brightness up, keyboard backlight up and down, a print screen button, and delete switches to insert with the FN key. And the power key is also part of the keyboard, all right? But if you tap it, nothing happens. You have to kind of hold it down for a little bit for it to react and actually register a key press. So the keyboard backlight is exceptionally bright. You can see it in like very bright environments, which is cool for cool factor, but in terms of functionality, it really doesn't make that big of a difference. Just because, you really only need the keyboard backlight for when you're in a dark environment, so you can actually see what you're typing. So overall, I do love the keyboard feel. The keys actually feel really good to type on. The biggest issue with the keyboard, in my opinion, is the arrow keys. These little short arrow keys are a pain to deal with when you're trying to use arrow keys a lot when you're navigating a Word document or an Excel document. I don't like this style of layout. because I end up like accidentally pressing the up, down, or the left, rights too much. I just can never get used to it. So that's kind of my thought on the keyboard layout. Yeah, overall, the keyboard will work really well for most people. And it's about what you would expect in this type of size and price range. All right, so I think we're ready to move into some CPU testing. So we're going to go ahead and get process less so installed. All right, and we're going to go open up Cinebench R23. All right. Bingo and bingo. Okay, checking chat. Let's see. Lenovo Slim 7 14-inch versus ZenBook 14 Pro are competing for laptop of the year. Interesting take. That is an interesting take. Maybe in the ultra portable category segment, but I definitely wouldn't say that that's the case for, you know, the other. Well, I would not say that's the case in just like in general, you know, when compared to against the higher performance laptops. So, okay, so let's talk about the Razer Synapse software real quick as we're getting into this overview. So the Synapse software, if you're not familiar with it, I'll just do like a 30 seconds really quick overview. So you can control your Razer devices in Synapse, and it's the kind of thing that is pretty easy, and generally, I don't know, I like it overall, except when it bugs out a little bit. The Blade 18, I've had to reinstall Synapse a couple times, but in general, it's been pretty good for me. So inside of the primary system settings, you can switch the functionality key to be function keys, which is the F1 through 12, or multimedia keys, which is like the volume up, down, play, pause. I switch it to multimedia keys when I'm using my laptop. Under performance, you have 3 general modes. You have balance mode, which you can set the manual fan modes if you want it to be really quiet. You can let it run warmer, and it'll be a very quiet machine. It might thermal throttle a bit. If you run it to high, you'll get the fan noise to go up to be quite a bit louder. And right now the fans are they ramping? I'm not really hearing the fans going right now. It should, in theory, start ramping up to 5,600 RPMs. There is silent mode, which is going to power limit throttle your laptop significantly to where you don't get as much performance out of it, but it will be quiet as well. And then custom mode allows your CPU to be low, medium, or high, or boost. And GPU mode can be low, medium, or high as well. And these combinations of settings is usually the highest level of performance, being in boost with max fan mode available. All right, so if I'm in here and I go to max fan mode, check marked, now that we're both in boost mode, we should be in the highest performance settings that you can get on this Blade 15, okay? So, awesome. That's basically a quick overview. I guess your display, you can also have it switch to 60 hertz when you go to battery mode from 240 hertz to 60 hertz. And then you also have your battery health optimizer, which allows you to switch your charge, your maximum charge, from anywhere from 50% to 80%. If you want it to last as long as possible, set it to 50%. If you want it to last a good amount every day, set it to 80%, but still have good longevity. If you need to use it a lot and you know you need to maximize your battery life every day, you can just let it go to 100%. It's just when you let it sit at 100%, it's going to gradually degrade your battery quality of your lithium-ion battery. There also is lighting. Overall, you can change the brightness of the logo on the back. You can switch your keyboard effects between a handful of different effects. You've got ambient awareness, audio meter, breathing, fire, reactive, ripple, spectrum lighting, starlight, static, wave, and wheel. And if I were to give you just a quick overview of those, let's go ahead and do that so you can kind of see what it looks like on the backlighting. So ambient awareness test, not sure. I think this is what it uses the it uses the on-screen whatever's being displayed on your screen to show you. So if it's kind of be cool if you're watching a movie if the keyboard, I guess, backlight changes with what's on the TV screen. Audio meter, this is basically if you've got audio going, it'll activate the keyboard brightness. There's breathing, which is going to bring the light between either two different colors or turn it off and on. There's fire, which is going to be like a yellow-red. There's reactive, which I believe is basically when you press a key, it'll switch. There's a ripple, which ripple is going to... it's changing everything. Okay, so ripple. If I press the shift key there, you can see it kind of rippling out away from the shift key. You can also change the color that it ripples. It didn't change it. There we go. So now it's red. Spectrum cycling. This will change the whole keyboard as one color between, or keeps it one color but switches between different colors. Starlight is going to change your random keys bouncing back and forth around. I don't think it looks that good. Static is one color, and you can pick the solid color, and it'll just stay that. Wave, I do like wave a lot. This is usually the way I set my Blade 18. There's also wheel, which is similar to wave, but it rotates in a circle around the center of the keyboard. You can also change the direction that the wheel is going. And with the wave, you can also change the direction. So there's quite a bit of customization, and there's also the whole Chroma Studio, so you can set up your own if there's something specific you really, really want to do. I'm curious as to why our max fans are not kicking in right now, because we did switch it to max fan mode, and usually it would automatically start kicking on the fans. It did that earlier today when I was... messing with the laptop. I might go for a restart here, just to make sure that things are working how they're supposed to be working. I don't know if it'll actually make a difference, but better safe than sorry in my case. If I'm not hearing the fans, I want to make sure that we're doing it correctly if possible. Okay. All right, checking out chat. Lance says there's not much difference between the Titan and the Raider. However, I play everything in 4K. Yeah, the display and the mechanical keyboard, and I think the cooling system is probably the biggest differences. But it's not like if you use the Titan or the Raider, like it's just a massive difference in terms of performance or temperatures. I just think the Titan's cooling system is a little bit better because it has the 4-fan system. So, all right. So let's try getting into Cinebench R23 again. So this is the first time, again, me testing the i7 137 or 13800H. So I'm very curious to see what we get. I'm also going to open up HW info so we can get a look at our temperature readouts. Again, right now, I'm not hearing the fans kick in, so let me make sure that we're... right now it's in balanced auto mode. Let's go to... run boost. Max fan mode. Now I'm hearing the fans come on. And I can barely hear them. Come on. They're coming on, though. That is the audio. I have the mic about 4 inches away from the fans coming out right now, so you can hear the jet engine taking off right now. All right, and just for fun of it, let's see if I can get our audio meter to give us a reading on the fan noise. I'll have to get a new battery on this guy because I haven't used it in a couple years. Come on, buddy. You can do it for like a few seconds, right? Come on. So 52.8 decibels is what it seemed like. That is very minimal fan noise, in my opinion. Many laptops this year are pushing past 56 into like the 60 range, with the 60 being the loudest overall. Overall, I am impressed with the fan noise in terms of quietness. Now we'll have to find out how this laptop performs at that level of fan noise, because that's the follow-up question. Can it actually keep this CPU cool and get us into good performance territory? So let's go ahead and start off with a single run. Our core clocks right now are 4.2 gigahertz on our P cores, 3.3 gigahertz on our E cores, which is obviously very good. Our CPU package is 90 degrees. We have not raised up the back. Let me raise the back real quick. All right. All right, so. Oh, things are getting spicy on the temperatures and the performance. 19,000 for our first run in Cinebench R23. That is phenomenal for a thin and portable style system. .1 gigahertz across all of the P cores, 3.3 gigahertz across the E cores. Our temperatures, our core temp right now is 89 degrees, but our package temp is 97, 99. So we are reaching thermal throttling territory. Our CPU is downstepping from 4.1, 4.2 now into 3.9, 3.8 gigahertz. We'll have to see how things go as we do a 10-minute test. It looks like we'll definitely have some reduced performance as we go along. We're at 18,400 for our second run, so we went down 600 points due to this thermal throttling, which is not amazing. It is a bit disappointing to me that we're hitting 100 degrees Celsius. That said, we are putting a lot of wattage through this CPU for a system that is like, 0.6 inches thick, like 0.66, I think, inches thick. It's extremely thin system. 95 watts going through the system right now, which that is very, very good amount of wattage, right? Like, we got to recognize that there is like the law of thermodynamics here, that as a laptop gets thinner, it can only get so powerful for the thickness of the machine itself. 17,743. So I guess if anything, the only reason we're hitting the 100-degree mark is that Razer is letting the CPU just run wild. Like it can go as high a power as it can thermally handle, basically. And I think it's very safe having a CPU hit 100 degrees Celsius, even if it's maintaining 100 degrees Celsius for an extended period of time. Let's say during a video render or something, you're not going to fry your system. It's just maybe the total longevity of the system may go down slightly as you run it at 100 degrees. But like, for example, I've run a test on a CPU at 100 degrees doing crypto mining, and it was able to sustain 100 degrees Celsius for like 6 months in a row without failing. So, and that was with an older Intel chip. So these newer ones are designed to hit the 100 degree mark. So was the ones, you know, that I did the 100 degrees Celsius test on. So, ultimately, we'll have to see what temperature range we fall into for a 10-minute test, because it looks like the power limit drops down into the 90s for our power limit, maybe 85, 95 range. Whereas right out of the gate, it goes all the way up to 125 watts, which is a juicy amount of power for a system that is this thin. So I am torn in the sense that this isn't necessarily perfectly tuned. But at the same time, I'm glad Razer's letting this beast be unleashed, because previous blades sometimes were like totally tamed down to where you couldn't get even close to the maximum performance out of the system. So I really appreciate that Razer is kind of letting this thing fly as fast as it can go. So we're going to let this thing cool down just a little bit, get down to at least 50 degrees on the CPU package power. The CPU package temp. And then we are going to start. So we're at 55 degrees right now on the CPU, which is good. It's coming down very fast. And then we're going to start our 10-minute test, and we'll see what we get with this i7-13800H for a 10-minute throttle test. It'll probably be right around this 17,600. Let's go ahead and get this test started. And we'll also reset our average value so we can see what our average clock speeds are on the CPU for the P cores and E cores. You know, again, right out the gate, 4.1 to 4.2 gigahertz, and our package temperatures are climbing. We're doing 120 watts of power to that CPU, which is a very high amount of wattage. You know, it's the similar amount of wattage that we saw in the Blade 16 and Blade 18. We get to like 120, 130 watts of power. With an i9 chip, it just goes so much faster having all those extra cores. It's like the amount of performance you're getting for the amount of power is just a lot better as the power is distributed across more cores, essentially. So if you're after just a lot more performance in your CPU, going with the Blade 16 or the Blade 18 and getting that i9 13980HX or 13900HX at the very minimum. 13950HX is also excellent. The 24 core 32 threads really is going to boost performance much higher. And I think that's very important for someone to know. If you're, a lot of people that are going to be considering the Blade 15 are going to be video editors. They're going to be Photoshop, graphic designers. Those programs absolutely, crush your CPU, at least some of them, depending on the program. And being able to get a higher power system with more cores and threads may be the way to go, especially if you're spending $2,500 on a laptop like this, and you can get the more core option. It's certainly something to consider. And I feel like you are going to get your money's worth if you were to upgrade to the Blade 16 and get that i9 chip and get the 4060 or 4070 or 4080 version. And another part of that whole performance spectrum is that the RTX 4080 and 4090 also have 2 media encoders, where the 4060, 4070 versions only have the 1 media encoder on the GPU. So if you're doing things that the encoder can boost, you can get significant gains on the RTX 4080 and 4090 version models for things like After Effects, Premiere, DaVinci Resolve, the things that can utilize the NVIDIA GPU. So certainly something to consider. All depends on which application you're running, because there's a lot of applications that are also CPU bound. And so the CPU bound games or applications where you can just really leverage the power of multi-core threads, going with the i9 or a Ryzen 9 7945HX processor, both of those processors are just going to put out vastly more performance on the CPU level. Now, so what is what is the reason that anyone would consider the Blade 15 after all of the things I just said? Like all these things I just said negative about the Blade 15. Why would someone consider the Blade 15 as an option? Well, it's mainly because this thing is so dang thin. It is a thin laptop. It's much thinner than most of the laptops out there, and this laptop is very competitive with the performance of most thinner laptops out there. So, you know, I'm anticipating we're going to get around 17,000 to 18,000 for our 10-minute test. And given that level of performance, you know, like the Zephyrus G16 got right in that ballpark of performance. The Zephyrus G14 got in that ballpark within 10% of that range, you know. So it's the kind of thing that is right in line with what I'm expecting for a laptop of this thickness level. Okay, so checking chat, Kalen says, certainly seems like Razer made a good call to increase the thickness overall. Too bad this one seems a bit compromised compared to the 16 and 18. That is correct. But really the biggest thing about compromising in this unit is not so much that yeah, we have 87 watts of power right now being sustained, 95 watts of power. We're averaging 93.5 watts of power. The biggest difference between this and the Blade 16 and 18 really is the part that's on the inside, because the i9 24 core 32 thread is just so much more performance per watt of electricity, because it's just so much more it's like the performance per watt is so much greater that if this had the i9 chip, we would be seeing, I would guess, at least 25 to 27,000 in Cinebench R23. It wouldn't be matching. It would not match the Blade 16 or 18 in terms of overall performance, you know, busting 30,000 or more, but it would still be a significant gain just from having the improved silicon. But you don't even have the option of getting the i9 13900HX lineup series that has the increased core count. You do have the i9 13900H, I believe, as an option, but that does not increase your cores. It's just a higher bin CPU, and it's not going to be that much of a performance upgrade, quite frankly. It's going to be a small performance upgrade, where if you go to the i9 13900HX series, the HX series has additional E-cores, and those E-cores are just very power efficient for boosting overall multi-threaded performance. So yeah, Marco M says, plain stupid, these are not going to sell well. Yeah, the biggest things, the biggest reason why this is not going to sell well from a raw performance perspective is just the performance per dollar is not particularly great when compared to the Blade 16 with the i9 13900HX series. And then so it's like, why would I get this when I can get, you know, spend a little bit more money and get like 50 to 70% more CPU performance for only maybe a 20% increase to cost. And then the other flip factor is, you know, or you could go cheaper. You could go with like the Zephyrus G16 for $1449 and get the same level of CPU performance and a similar level of GPU performance in a slightly less premium package. You'd save $1,000 for you abandon the speaker system is about the same level of quality, maybe a little bit better on the Blade 15. The keyboard layout, the touchpad quality is in a similar ballpark. You both have Windows Hello. The Zephyrus G16 has 16:10 aspect ratio, and it's only a full HD display. But you could go with the QHD version that's going to be even better quality display than this one, and it's a 16:10 QHD plus, you know. So I do think the Blade 15, in terms of looking at it from a CPU performance perspective, is a tough sell. Because you either could go cheaper and get the same level of performance, or you could go just a little bit thicker and you could get vastly more performance. And it's just like, it's in a tough spot. It's in a tough spot. And you really like the only person that's really going to consider the Blade 15 as like, oh, this is a top choice, is going to be someone who's like, I want the thinnest, all metal, premium build, ultra portable, you know, and maybe they've had a really great experience with Razer products in the past. You know, that's the person that might consider the Blade 15 as an option, at least based on this initial impressions. So we've got 1:30 left. Let's go ahead and take a look at our core clock averages and performance level. So we've got 3.73 gigahertz on average for our P cores. You know, with the i9 chip on the Blade 16, we're averaging like what, like 4.0 or maybe like 3.9 gigahertz on the P core. So you're not only do you get 8 P cores, but they're averaging higher clock speeds because of the increased wattage that you get with the Blade 16. And the E cores are also at a higher clock speed, and you get twice as many on the i9-13900HX version of the processor. So yeah, it really is a huge difference in terms of CPU performance for the Blade 15. So we got 93 degrees, 88 degrees right now. We've averaged 87 degrees for our core temps, 93 for our CPU core max. So that is not thermal throttling consistently. We are power limit throttling. We only thermal throttled at 100 degrees temporarily during the initial boost phase. And we have been power limit throttling at 94 degrees, 93 degrees since that initial boost phase went down. Now, we have averaged 91 watts for our CPU package power. And I think that's very good for a laptop of this thinness. That is very good for a laptop of this thinness. It's just the i7 chip is just not as power efficient as the i9 chip with all of this additional cores, which is really kind of hurting this laptop's performance potential. It's just when you pay this much money, I really wish you were getting the higher end chip that you got in the Blade 16. That's basically, I guess that's my summary of like kind of the price to performance initial impression. Let's see what we get for our final score. 17,671. So right in line with what we were expecting based on our initial testing. And obviously that's very good performance in a portable form factor. Like, it's not a bad amount of performance. If you're someone who is not really that focused on CPU performance, this is enough juice to do video editing, Photoshop, just about everything that you're going to need to do, all the office tasks that you'll need to do. No problem. It's just that if you're someone who needs a lot of CPU performance, that's a good number for a thin and light and portable premium type of experience. But it's not nearly as good as if you were to get a system that's a bit thicker. You know, or you could go to something that's a bit cheaper as well. So that's kind of like the main downside right now, I think, to this laptop is just it's stuck between a rock and a hard place. It's like, do you go with the more expensive Blade 16 that's slightly thicker and a bit heavier for a lot more performance for a little bit more money? Or do you go for something like the Zephyrus series or maybe like the Stealth 14 series or, you know, one of those other laptops that is going to be very portable and just slightly less premium. All right, so we're moving into Timespy now. Let's go ahead and see what we get for our Timespy numbers. Zaflexi says, I'm battling between HP Omen or Asus. Which one has less problems? You know, I've been hearing a lot of positive reviews of the Omen 17, even from people that got like the RTX 3000 series and they've had it for a couple of years now. Like reading through the comments on the channel, there's been a lot of positive user feedback. That said, there's been a lot of positive user feedback for the Asus lineup as well, except for all the coil whine in 2023. There's been a lot of coil whine issues. So if you're someone who's very acoustically sensitive, you may end up having to return the Asus laptop if you go that route. Or maybe it won't be that bad on your unit. I'm not sure. You can get the Legion Pro 7i for $22.99. Yeah, no, that is a phenomenal deal as well. And I think it's another great option when compared to this Blade 15, but it's an even bigger option. Like in terms of portability, it's even bigger than the Blade 16. Like I would say that going to the Legion Pro 7i is like, you're stepping into the not as portable laptop category when you go to that level of thickness and weight. So to me, like, it's not like it's not a terrible option to consider. But you have to be willing to haul a bigger laptop. And like, I know, like my fiance Carla, she would not want that. Like, she would consider the Blade 15. It's in a light enough category, but going over 5 pounds, nah. She's like, no thanks, I don't want this. It's too big, it's too bulky, it weighs too much. You know, she likes carrying a small backpack with like a small power adapter, you know. So it really depends on what kind of a laptop person you are. And this laptop is definitely for the people that want something that's more portable, right? So when you're comparing this, you got to keep that in mind. And I would say the Blade 16 is like one small step up in terms of portability, heaviness, and weight factor. It's not going to be that noticeable for a lot of people. But you go to the Legion Pro 7i, and it's like another step up in terms of thickness and overall size. Ibrahim says, aiming towards a 1080p high setting 60 FPS in AAA games, do you think the 4060 is enough for at least 3 years? Yeah, probably. I think as long as you're willing to fiddle with the settings, you're going to have to still turn down some settings at least. And you're going to have to turn down some settings at least for a number of different things, you know. So here is the test. Now we're in Timespy. We have 104 watts of power, 105 watts of power going to this RTX 4060. The temperatures on the 4060 are phenomenal. Only 65 degrees right now. 109, basically 109.3, 110 watts of power. So, I mean, we're basically reaching the maximum performance for an RTX 4060. In this laptop, look at our boost clock. We're hitting 2490 for our GPU boost clock. That's right near the peak of what an RTX 4060 can do. So that's phenomenal in terms of GPU performance. You know, we were kind of ragging on the Blade 15 for its CPU performance, but for GPU performance, that's where this is going to be like just as good as like the Blade 16. Because you're not really going to see much performance gain going from a Blade 15 to 16 if you're doing both RTX 4060s in both chassis. So that's where, like, if you're going to go 4060 with a Razer product, going with the Blade 15 is probably going to give you the same performance all the way up the product stack from the Blade 16 and Blade 18. So that's, I guess that's a big advantage to the Blade 15 in that perspective. Looking at our temperatures, we have reached 69 degrees on the GPU, 77, 85, 70 on the CPU. So we're going bouncing between high 60s, mid 70s. We're kind of averaging around the 75 degrees Celsius range on that CPU so far, which is good. It's both the CPU and GPU are in very good temperature ranges right now. So that's great to see. Lance says, I haul my Titan around everywhere. Really, the Titan is still fairly portable compared to a lot of high-performance laptops. Like, I think the Titan is just as portable as, like, the Scar 18. More portable than the Alienware M18. You know, it's still very thin. It's just a very deep laptop. So you have to, like, be able to take it into, you have to have a big backpack basically. Okay, so we finished our Timespy run. 10,443 for our Timespy run. This is no overclock enabled. CPU score 13,244. So that's a very good CPU score overall for a thin air and lighter machine. And our graphics score at 10,400 is still very good. You know, we're reaching the peak pinnacle level of RTX 4060 performance. This is going to be about as good as it gets for a 4060. I'm starting to run Speedway as well when we do these tests. So let's go ahead and hop into Speedway and see what we get. The GPU is reaching 115 watt. Looks good compared to some other 4060s. Yeah, this is not bad in terms of a gaming laptop perspective. So far, excellent impressions from a gaming laptop perspective. I love it. Ibram says, I don't mind playing at medium or low settings. I have a 1050 Ti and an old AMD Phenom 2 CPU. Yeah, I mean, if you're okay playing on lower settings, the biggest limiter to you is probably going to be your VRAM. So realistically, if you're trying to get as future-proofed as possible going into the future, and you don't mind going down to low or medium settings, going with an RTX 3080 with 16 gigs of VRAM is probably the way to go. Yeah, and then you just turn off ray tracing, you don't run post-processing effects on high, and you should be able to get at least 60 FPS in basically all titles for the next couple years at least, if next 5 years probably. And then in many of the games, you're still going to be able to go to ultra settings and still get more than 60 FPS. It's just going to depend on the game. Okay, so taking a look, we're getting 27 FPS. Obviously, this is a very demanding. This is the latest test from 3D Mark. So it's going to be the most demanding test overall. And I believe it features a lot of ray tracing. You can see all the shadows and lighting. So this is kind of like an RTX test or a ray tracing test, ray tracing enabled test kind of focus. I don't believe it has frame gen as far as I know. It's really focusing on the ray tracing. See all the lighting bouncing around the studio? It's a very complex ray tracing environment. It's actually a pretty cool graphics in this, I'm not gonna lie. All right, for Speedway, we got 2,562. Very good. Let's move into some of our game testing now. We're going to go into Apex Legends. I've already increased our FPS max. So inside of Apex Legends are actually wait. Yeah, no, we'll do Apex Legends. We'll just keep it going. We'll keep it rolling. But there's a game I want to show you. It's an Unreal 5 game. I was going to do that first before we get into these games, but we'll do it next. It's a game I plan on playing the crap out of. It's only in private beta right now, but because it's built on the Unreal 5 engine, I want to start testing it. It should be pretty representative of a lot of the games out there. In terms of future performance in Unreal 5 engines. So, yeah. Okay, so we are going to do... Basically, we're on Ultra settings, QHD to start out with. Oh. Looks like they changed the firing range. Interesting. Interesting. There was a big update with Apex Legends recently, so looks like the firing range may have been changed. This is going to change all of our testing, looks like.
Congratulations.
Oh yeah, it's very different now. Whoa. Okay, so let's change this to 1. All right, let's see here. Do they have the scout test still? Interesting. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the averages pulled up here. Oh, I gotta get Afterburner open. Benchmark. I forgot to set the hotkeys. Okay, so we're getting 100 in this new firing range. We're getting 119. This is so interesting. It lets you know if you got the headshot or not. That is cool. I really like that. That is neat. Okay, so I guess in this scenario now we'll just do a try to get all the headshots on all the targets. Okay, so this display has minimal ghosting. I can tell we're not hitting the maximum refresh rate of the display right now because we're doing 120 FPS. It's still a very good gaming experience. Let's move on to low settings. All right, so here we are on low settings now. 160 FPS. It definitely feels a bit smoother now. Yeah, 177 FPS. So if you're wanting to shoot for like the 240 FPS range, you're probably going to need to go down to 1080p. Let's see what we get at 1080p. Oh, right now the scaling's messed up. I have to aim my mouse higher up to get it to aim correctly. Okay, well, all right, so now we're getting 216 FPS. $250. Okay, so now we're getting the 240 hertz refresh rate range, which is obviously really, really great if you're trying to max out a 240 hertz FPS screen. It doesn't feel like the render resolution set to 100%. This is really interesting. It's hard to click on things because everything is scaled incorrectly right now. Oh, now it actually fixed itself there. Interesting. So overall, obviously, because this is only a 4060, right? This is a 4060. We're not hitting our maximum possible refresh rates on this laptop. It's still very good. Taking a look at our overall temps and everything, our GPU doing 79 degrees, which is good. That's fine. Good boost clock, 101 watts, 96% GPU utilization, which means basically we're only being a little bit CPU throttled. And we're using 55 watts to the CPU, which is good. It's a good amount of CPU, GPU, TDP here, 155, 160 watts. But our CPU temperature is spicy at 95 degrees to 100 degrees. So what this tells me is that I wish our CPU had a little bit better cooling in this scenario. And basically we're not being able to maximize our GPU performance because our CPU is kind of being thermal throttled, limited a little bit. Obviously our performance is still very good, and you can still totally play games on this laptop without any problem. Our 1% low is not suffering, but it's certainly not your ideal thermal cooling solution setup right now. Yeah. Okay, so let's hop into a gun run match real quick, and then we'll move on to our next game. So we'll try getting some kills and move on. Portable thin systems should never go above 4060. What? Man, someone should tell Asus, because the Zephyrus G14 goes to a 4090, and that thing is the most powerful thin light gaming laptop that you can get, as far as I know. Seems pretty awesome to me. So yeah, I mean, in terms of if you're wanting the most performance per dollar, yes, thin and light systems should not go to 4090, but if you're not necessarily after the most performance per dollar and you're just after the most performance per pound, that's where getting a 4090 and a 14-inch laptop is insanely advantageous. Big Jesse says, my Blade 18 4090 runs amazing. Yeah, and that's a pretty thin laptop too, the Blade 18. But this Blade 15 is another level of thinness, for sure. Another level of thinness, you know. So, yeah. All right, let's move into our test. We're gonna do a spatial audio test to see if we can hear left-right audio footsteps during this gameplay. So. I'm going to have the audio up, so I'm not going to really be able to talk over the audio. The speakers are loud on this system. That was weird. So I have reset our average FPS. We're doing 190 FPS in this scenario. We did some damage. Oh, I'm definitely hearing left-right audio separation. Oh, come on, pop back out here. That guy's almost dead. Oh yeah. This is a great gaming experience. Oh, we are murdering right now. Oh boy, this guy's gonna pop out and kill us. Okay, 3-on-1. We didn't have a chance. Overall, we're leading the server right now in kills, so that's a good sign. All right. So, I mean, this is a great gaming experience. I mean, it's It's hard to complain about the actual gaming experience here. Like, I'm able to aim really well.
Charging my shield. Bam! Here goes a boozle. Giving my shields a
Ooh, too many people.
Hey, look at this.
Okay, wow. We're doing awesome. That was a great gaming experience. I could play Apex Legends on this.
Bam! Bam! Guess I'm running out of ideas.
You know, I could definitely play Apex Legends on this, no problem, and be very happy. You know, it's not the ideal gaming experience, but it's still 184 FPS, you know? So, nice. Okay, so next up, we're going to be testing this game for the first time in GizmoSlipTech, or GizmoSlipTech history. So this game is called Illuvium, and this is a game that's a lot like Pokemon. I'll give you a basic explanation. I have to sign in because I have to sign in separately on this. So this game utilizes the Unreal Engine 5, and which is going to be a next-gen engine. A lot of new games are going to use this engine, and so we're going to be looking for how does the CPU, you know, does this focus on CPU performance? Does this focus on GPU performance? Do we have enough VRAM going on, you know, for actually playing this game, and all of that. All right, so let's find out. So essentially, what Illuvium is a game that's a lot like Pokemon, where you go around and you capture what are called alluvials. You gather resources as well, so you have to not only have the resources, but you also have to gather the resources, and then you upgrade your equipment, and then you capture the alluvials, and then in the end game, the goal is you use the alluvials to battle other players, a lot like Pokemon, like a Pokemon card collection, basically. But the cool thing about Illuvium is that all of the alluvials that you'll capture when the game comes out, not now, right now it's just in beta, everything is just going to be reset and everything before the game goes live. But when the game does come out, it will all be on the blockchain. So you'll actually be able to sell the alluvials you capture, like the Steam Marketplace. Like if you own like guns in Counter-Strike or your knives in Counter-Strike, like you can sell those to other players. You can do that in this game where you can sell the alluvials that you've captured. So this is one of the 7 regions you'll be able to explore. And so you'll be able to basically go around capturing alluvials. And the alluvials are going to be in these bubbles right here.
Got ya.
And so right now I want to point out that we are doing 107 watts of power to the GPU. We are GPU bound, but our FPS is right now 58. Well, let's take a look at our settings. So we are at 2560 by 1440, so QHD, 85 degrees for our world view. Our graphics settings are set to quality for DLSS. Our view distance and all the settings are set to epic, except for textures I set to medium because VRAM is killer in this game. Like it uses all 8 gigs of VRAM, and it was stuttering a bit. It still is stuttering a little bit. Our 1% lows are at 18. But if I set right now our VRAM is using 6.7 gigs. If I set it to epic, let's go ahead and take a look. Notice our VRAM usage goes up to 7.1 gigs right now, which is not quite maxing everything, but it's pretty dang close. 7.3. So I'm anticipating we are basically maxing our VRAM right now. All right, so this right here is an alluvial portal. We can scan this, and we can see basically if we want to potentially go into this portal to capture alluvials. So it looks like there's an Atlas. I want to capture Atlas. It was one of the best alluvials in the game. So when you go into the portal, basically, you end up in a battle mode now. And you send in your own alluvial. So these are the alluvials that I have already captured here. And I have to basically battle the alluvial enemies here. So this is the alluvial that I want to capture. And I want to use as little energy as possible when I capture these alluvials. The more energy I use, the less energy I'll have up here at the end to actually use to capture them, because you can capture more than one alluvial. So there's just like Pokemon, there's different attributes like Earth, Fire, Water, Plant, you know, stuff like that. So you got to like plan your strategy about conquering, you know, countering the enemy. So I think this is going to win me the battle. Let's find out. And so right now we're doing 63 FPS on mostly epic settings. And honestly, it's not looking that good for me right now. I don't know if I'm going to win this fight. I might lose it. Okay, looking a bit better now. Okay, all right, yeah, we ended up winning with 3 leftovers, so that is good. Okay, so now that we've won, we can try to capture these alluvials. So I've got these shards. These shards will also be on the blockchain, so I can use one of these. I'll try to use my uncommon shard to capture Atlas. How does the laptop surface feel? Warm? Yes. Right now, the wrist rest is, I would say, very warm, not hot, but definitely warmer than I would ideally like. And, oh, hey, look, we captured Atlas, so that's good. And so each of these alluvials you'll be able to upgrade. So there's 3 different evolutions. You need to catch 3 of each of these to be able to upgrade to the next one. Then you have to have 3 of these to upgrade to the ultimate version. And so now that I captured one of those, I could try to capture another one here, but I don't think I'm going to. I'm just going to escape because I don't want to use my last shard on those 3. So for this next part of the test, let's just run around, explore the world for a minute and look at our performance stats and kind of like look at like how much the CPU is being used versus the GPU. And like again, it feels like our CPU temps might be just a little bit high in general, but not necessarily the end of the world. We are in double boost mode or like over boost mode basically. So the graphics in this game are really good. Like it really utilizes the Unreal 5 engine, I think really, really well. So if you use the right jumping technique, you can actually jump a lot further than normal because you can like build speed. And you can also like use these bubble things to like fly up in the air. So let's do that real quick. So 100 degrees right there on the CPU. And notice that like we are GPU bound in this game for the most part, but it is still slamming the CPU super hard in this Unreal 5 engine. So it's, I don't know, like you definitely want to, like, I think the Unreal 5 engine games are going to really utilize CPU focus. So getting a good CPU is going to be very important to future proofing for this Unreal 5 engine. You know, like it's obviously going to vary from game to game. Depending on how it's optimized, how complex the game environments are. Like this is a very complex game environment. Where you can see like really far into the distance with tons of different objects. And yeah, and our VRAM, like we are basically maxing our VRAM. Our 1% lows right now are actually not terrible at 36. So I can shoot now and fly out here. So now that we've made it to the top of the world, let's go ahead and just try to fly. I don't know. I guess let's see where we can go, where there might be something else to do. Let's go over here. Which direction is that? That's that direction? Okay, so there should be stuff for us to like capture or harvest over there. So let's just go ahead and zoom over there. We definitely had some noticeable stutters there as we're loading into this new area. I think it has to load like a little bit more detailed textures into the map. So another thing you can do when you're flying around, whee! So you can like slide, which is really cool. But you also have this heat vision that basically lets you see resources that are harvestable, like through the walls. So you can like basically easily find the things that you need to like harvest. So okay, so this is a really good deposit because it's got an epic shard in it. So again, 100 degrees on the CPU here. There's our uncommon shard. I really wanted to get that.
This looks good.
So there you go. So overall, I mean, this laptop can definitely play Illuvium just fine, but man, this WASD keys right now on this laptop are getting very spicy, very hot, temperature wise. Like it's not a I guess it's not a super comfortable gaming experience, you know, like I much prefer it if the WASD keys might get a little bit warm at most, but right now it's almost like an uncomfortable level of warmth, you know. So
I'll use it.
it's, yeah, I mean, that's partially what you get when you go with the ultra thin and light. Usually almost all thin and lights tend to get warmer than the thicker machines, and that includes like the Zephyrus G14. Though I feel like the Stealth 14 did not get that much hotter. I don't know. I don't think it was cold, but it wasn't like it was like super hot or something, you know? So I'm just gonna put down a beacon so I can come back here again. And we'll go ahead and call it here. We averaged 73 FPS on all epic settings, on the highest settings, which is not bad. Our 1% lows weren't terrible at 23, but it's not like a super fluid, smooth experience the way you like crave, you know, your gaming experience to be. Obviously, we could try setting the game settings to low, and that's obviously going to make the game look a lot less enjoyable. Like the grass textures are now gone pretty much. I'm gonna go and reset it. So now we're getting 120 FPS with 67 for our 1% lows, but still, it's far from ideal, I think. Well, I mean, the FPS is way smoother now. So maybe this, if you're really after the smoothness factor, maybe you'd want to go something like medium settings or something, you know? Medium settings probably has a lot better grass coverage, at least. Okay, so medium settings, 124. So yeah, medium settings are definitely a lot better gaming experience, I think. I'm just gonna zoom down this hill. Oh, there's another alluvial portal. Oh, I missed it. That was a tough angle. Okay, so that's Illuvium. You know, a 4060, I would say, is going to be able to play that game just fine. Just a little stuttery on maybe as it's loading in textures or new areas of the map, but overall, very good gaming experience, I think. I think the biggest downside right now to this Blade 15 in terms of gaming experience is really the temperature of the keyboard deck is on the warm side. Like right now, this area, like this is not too warm. Warmer, very warm, very, very warm. Right here, this lip is very, very warm. And then the WASD keys are, I'd say, just warm. but like, you know, your wrist is gonna kind of be over this whole area, and like this area is pretty warm. You know, definitely warmer than like I would say is gonna be super comfortable for some people. You know, if you're always in an air-conditioned environment, it probably won't be that bad, but if you're required to, you know, play in like or use a laptop in like warmer environments, it's going to be very uncomfortable on your hands if you need to use it in your lap, for example, or for extended periods of time, or honestly just using your wrist rest on it in general is not going to be like hyper comfortable, I don't think. Okay, so let's check out Warzone. So Warzone tends to be a fairly CPU bound game. That said, we are using 2560 by 1440p. Minimum settings, except for textures, are set to high. DLSS is on quality, okay? So for some reason, it's not on full screen, though. Like, it should be full screen. And it's not. There we go. All right. And I want to have full transparency about Illuvium as well. Like, it is a game that I have invested in personally. I have some ILV tokens, which are the governance token for the game. So just so you guys understand that. It's not sponsored or anything. I'm covering it because I'm really excited about the game. I cannot wait to play it. And I'm so excited about it that I wanted to invest in it. So, because I was a big Pokemon Go player, and I'm trying to look for Battle Royale solos. I'm not seeing it. You know, I was a big. I guess we'll do ranked. I was a big Pokemon Go player. Like, I ranked up to like level like 33. Like, I was really into it. Oh, you have to reach level 45 to unlock rank play? Okay, well, we can't do ranked then. I guess we're going to do duos. And have to abandon the person halfway through. So, yeah. So, anyway. Okay, so checking out chat. Stardom says the CPU temperature fluctuates with a large margin. I don't know if that's just the nature of this game. Yeah, Stardom plays. I think the CPU was being slammed more heavily when there was a lot more items on the display. And that's probably like, you know, if we're facing away from like the general area of the map, there's probably a lot less items for the CPU to calculate. So I noticed the wattage was dropping down to like 20 to 30 watts during that time period. But then when we turned around and we were in the center of the game mode area, it was just a lot more things for the system to calculate. So, you know, the game engine's going to be a lot more slammed on that CPU. And again, that's kind of where like having a strong CPU is going to really make a big difference, because if you only get like an i5 CPU, or if you're an older one, or like the CPU, like let's say like I know the Ryzen 5 5600H, for example, was a 6-core CPU with a smaller cache, and it really did not have the throughput to handle a lot of different game engines out there, which ended up being a big CPU bottleneck. So even if you had a good GPU with that CPU, it would limit you in a lot of the games. And I think that's going to be very true for games in the Unreal 5 engine. So that's, I think it's certainly something to that you can't ignore, you know? So Matt Hargert says, please use Returnal and or Halo Infinite, 2 games that nail PCIe bandwidth. Interesting. Halo Infinite might be a very interesting game to add to the testing queue. LSP says, using an Inspiron 7501 keyboard gets really hot when playing games, especially when multiple Android emulators are turned on. Those Android emulators are probably using your CPU to emulate it. So it would make sense, right? Okay, so I feel so bad. Ooh, that guy got me pretty good. Okay, so looking at our FPS right now, 95 FPS, 57 FPS for a 1% low. That's very good. Our CPU temps are being slammed to 100 degrees again. 77 watts to that CPU. So very high amount of wattage. 99 FPS was our average during the intro. 57 for a 1% low. That is excellent for a 1% low. 100 is still very good, I think, for this CPU. That said, I feel like if you again go with like an i9 13900 HX, you're really going to get a lot more FPS for your money, but like at least 20 to 30 more FPS. It's not going to be a small amount. This guy's going to be like, why are you landing on a bridge and running down it? I feel so bad. Okay, and away we go. I'm sorry. Oh, I overshot it a little bit. Okay. All right, so here we are. We're on our test bridge that we run across. Let's go ahead and run across this. 98 FPS, 72 for our 1% low. This is obviously very good FPS in general, especially for QHD. You know, if we were to do this test in full HD, we'd probably get, I would think, at least a bit more. But it's also, you know, a very CPU-bound game, so hard to say for sure. I'm just going to try to get a gun at least, in case someone comes up on us here. Alright, we've got a gun. It's a shotgun, though, isn't it? Let's get this gun. Alright, let's go ahead and see... So we're getting 95 FPS for our 1% lows. Let's try just dropping it down to 1080p and let's see what happens. Let's go full screen exclusive and we're going to drop it down to 1080. All right, and now that we've dropped it down to 1080, what? Okay, it's like, oh, it took a while to load, I guess, or something. All right, so... That's not it. So our FPS is like almost the same at 1080p or QHD, which it just goes to show you how CPU bound this game is, because we're basically getting the same exact FPS at full HD as we would in QHD. So this is a scenario where it's like, why would you ever... Oh, I got tag teamed with two people. Hey, at least I don't feel bad. Do I go to Gulag? All right, I'm going to Gulag. I'm not sure if I can get this to go back to 1440p. Cool, very nice. Yeah, so I would just play this at QHD resolution because you're CPU bound anyway. And right now we're averaging 122 FPS in the Gulag. It's a bit easier to run in here, not as CPU bound. See if we can kill this guy. Even if we kill him, though, we're going to back out, so... Oh, he got me. Okay. Very nice. Overall, I mean, obviously, very playable experience in Warzone. Again, the wrist rest is getting super spicy. I think that's going to be a theme of this laptop. The wrist rest being very spicy, so you gotta expect a very warm wrist rest with this Blade 15 series for sure. Stardom says, how the heck is the CPU still being bottlenecked? It's the way they did the game engine. I don't know. It's super interesting, but basically, the GPUs these days, like the GPUs are so powerful, and the game is so super optimized for GPU, and the real the whole game engine just is dependent on the CPU bandwidth and throughput. So, and memory too, being an important factor. So, Don asks, how is the fan noise? We measured the max fan noise at 53 or 52.8 decibels, which is pretty good. Like it's a fairly minimal fan noise overall. It is noticeable. It's not like it's completely quiet, but it's definitely not the loudest fan noise in the world. LSP says it does. This is why I would buy either a Scar 16 or Legion Pro 7i during the upcoming end of the year sales. Android emulators will run perfectly fine with the i9 HX, possibly other games simultaneously. Yeah, that's probably true. All of those cores, probably would be able to just run in the background on that Android emulator. Okay, so we're going to go into our benchmark for CSGO. We also got to turn on the console and turn on the net graph so we can read our FPS. Is anyone else in chat looking forward to Counter-Strike 2 when it comes out? I think the game is going to be really awesome. All right, so we're using default high settings, QHD 16:9, and we're going to turn on net graph 3. All right, and here we go. Let's see what we get. So right now, of course, we're QHD doing 200, 300, 300 to 400 FPS. Very good. We're really going to be focused in on the FPS that we're going to get around the we're really going to be focused in on the FPS when we're going through the smoke. If we're going to, that's basically at least my focus. So 1 second, I'm taking care of something real quick. Beautiful. All right. So down in the smoke, we're getting down to the 60 FPS range, which is pretty good for CSGO. But it's not like amazing. Like the i9 chips, we're getting like 90 down to 90s, like for just a moment, like in the thickest part of the smoke. So we're yet to see how the new smoke system in Counter-Strike 2 is going to handle the smokes, but I'm anticipating a pretty, probably a very CPU-focused game engine is what I'm thinking it's going to be. Kalen says, heck yes, Counter-Strike 2 is going to give it new life. Yeah. LSP says, I saw 50 FPS in the smoke. It definitely got down into that 50, 60 range when you're in the center of the smoke. So 331 FPS. 331 FPS, which is obviously very good for a Counter-Strike experience at a 240 hertz QHD, even on high settings, right? So moving into Cyberpunk 2077, let's see what we get. the the biggest thing about Cyberpunk for me these days is that it features all of the new NVIDIA upgrades to like the game engine, DLSS 3 with frame generation, ray tracing upgrades. You know, it's kind of like the showcase for the RTX 4000 series, that and maybe Hogwarts. But yeah. Do. So who all in chat has actually beaten Cyberpunk? Played all the way to the end. And who also did all of the side quests? Because that's also a whole nother level. Okay, so right now we're on Ray Tracing Ultra preset. Frame generation enabled. We're going to go to quality. DLSS is on quality. All right, so that's all the same settings that we've been running. Again, keep in mind this is QHD 16:9, so 1440p, not 1600p. So it's a little bit lower resolution than some of the other tests we've done on Cyberpunk. For the RTX 4060, I'm pretty sure our target FPS range is going to be like, we're just hoping it's playable with these settings. Right now, we're getting 52 FPS with 16 for our 1% lows, because look at our VRAM. We're at 8.1 gigs of VRAM utilization. That is not great on the VRAM. We're getting stutters because we're running into our total VRAM cap. And this is exactly what I was talking about earlier when I was talking about VRAM limitations with the RTX 4060. So if you're in the camp of you're wanting to future-proof and you want to play QHD games, your VRAM is going to be a big limiter, only at 8 gigs with a 4060. So going up to a 4080 with 12 gigs or a 4090 with 16 gigs, or going with previous gen 3080, 16 gigs, big advantage to buying those GPUs. Now, depending on the game, depending on the settings you run it at, you can get around the VRAM limitation. We're at 54 FPS for average, or 20 FPS for our 1% lows. I mean, you're going to be able to play this game. It's not going to be so skippy that it's unplayable or totally unenjoyable, but it's not ideal. And it's definitely going to hinder your overall gaming experience, in my opinion. We ended up with 55.17 FPS. And just for context, if you were instead to go with like an RTX 4080, you'd get like 100. And if you go to a 4090, you might get as high as like 125 on the higher end laptops. So literally more than double the FPS if you go with a 4080 or 4090 in this game. And your 1% low is also going to be much better too. So if we were to try to rerun this, to try to adjust for this, basically the two things I would change, you want to go to like performance mode, probably on DLSS to lower your render resolution. And then also if there's any way you can change the textures down to lower. I believe you have to restart the game to be able to do that though. So we're not going to do that today. All right. Moving into Cyberpunk 2077, moving into Dead Space, which we're not going to be testing with ray tracing, just DLSS on quality today. No frame generation. Everything's going to be on ultra settings, 16:9 QHD. So the goal target, I believe, in this game is probably going to be in like the 60-ish FPS range. You know, just basically because, you know, it's a 4060 and we're doing QHD and it's a AAA game that just came out. So, you know, this is the remake of the old Dead Space game. So, down here, we're going to go DLSS. We're going to go to quality. And we're going to go to ultra quality preset. All right. And then we want no dynamic scale. We want video output 240 hertz, 1440p. That's all correct. This is all correct. We are ready to continue. All right, and so we are getting 65 FPS, and interestingly enough, our CPU temperature is actually pretty dang good. Usually Dead Space slams the CPU. Let's see if it gets worse as we start moving around. Our 1% lows are also doing pretty good at 26. I guess it's not amazing. It hasn't stuttered on me. It's like it's oddly low at 25. It feels smoother than 26. I don't know. Maybe there was like one stutter that brought it down or something, but right now at this resolution, we're actually GPU bound at 100% GPU utilization right there. So, we're not being CPU bound, which is typically what we've seen in this game. Oftentimes in Dead Space, it's just like almost all CPU bounding nonstop. But I guess it's because it's a QHD resolution with only a 4060. It basically shifts us to being GPU bound primarily for Dead Space. So you have to probably go down to 1080p if you want it to be CPU bound. So overall, this is going to be an excellent gaming experience, I think, in Dead Space. We are not VRAM limited, 6.6 gigs of VRAM being utilized. Our temperature is 72 degrees on the GPU, 86, 82 on the CPU. Overall, a very good gaming experience for Dead Space. So, awesome. 66 FPS right now, 36 for a 1% lows. I think, oddly enough, this is going to be one of the better examples of gameplay and overall temperatures that we've seen so far on the Blade 15, which is weird because Dead Space is usually one of the games that just totally messes with the laptops that I've been testing because the CPU usually just gets slammed to like 100 degrees Celsius or something. So 71 FPS, 39 for a 1% low. Let's move into Dying Light 2. Don says the CPU is going to be fire. Well, you were wrong, sir. You were incorrect. It actually was good temps, only like 85 degrees, 82 to 84 in that range. Super interesting. Is the laptop running on performance mode or balance mode? We are in boost mode. So we're in custom, and then we've got boost maximum for the CPU and GPU, which basically tries to push both to the maximum possible limit. All right, so we're going to do high quality ray tracing preset. We're going to switch to full screen. Interesting. Pretty sure we have to reset the game. It should be restarting now. Basically, it has to switch into, I believe, like DirectX 12 or something like that in order to run the ray tracing. So by default, oftentimes it runs in DirectX 11. All right, so high quality ray tracing, full screen. We'll turn reflex on. No vertical synchronization. DLSS on quality. Frame generation enabled. All of that looks good. Let's go ahead and run the benchmark. I hope we get our Afterburner overlay to come up. Okay. There we go. All right, our afterburner overlay is up now. 78 FPS, 73. Keep in mind, we are in QHD with ray tracing on ultra high quality settings. So basically maxed out on this game. But we do have frame generation enabled. So really with frame generation games, you're going to get more visual artifacts and kind of glitchiness if you have a FPS rate that is like below 70-ish. So we're like right at the verge of it not being a great frame generation target. So I would probably try, like when you're using frame gen, I usually try to shoot for like 90 FPS or higher to ensure that there's enough frames to use the interpolated frames properly. So I'd probably reduce the settings down, maybe drop DLSS down to balanced mode, probably the first setting I would change. You could also try lowering ray tracing or just disabling ray tracing, and that would probably boost your FPS to like over 100 probably with just those two changes. So right now we are averaging 68 FPS. The 1% lows can't really be trusted because it switches between the scenes and that stutters a lot. So overall, very nice. It's gonna play pretty dang well in this scenario, but I would say that like I said, I would probably lower the settings a little bit more to get to 90, especially since it's zombie shooter. You want to be able to aim a little bit better. 73 FPS for our average. Excellent overall. It's gonna be a good all around experience, I think. Moving into God of War, let's find out what we get. Now, I noticed that it's saying these are running, but I don't think they're running. So sometimes Steam gets a little bugged when you switch between more. Don says, but it should be hot. Okay, that's a good comeback, but it's just not hot because it's a weaker GPU, and on a weaker GPU and a higher resolution, it's just more likely to be GPU bound. So that's the reason that the CPU didn't get slammed. All right, so we got to make sure need to be 16:9 aspect ratio. So 16:9 quality settings. So DLSS is going to be on quality, 16:9, QHD, 1440p. Graphic settings are on all ultra. It's the ultra preset. Go ahead and continue. Start on Play says, so the funny thing is my Ryzen laptop runs the CPU hotter in Dead Space than this Intel. Yes. But you may have, okay, so the Ryzen chips we've just been noticing consistently running super hot. Just very, very warm. And it's kind of a bummer and kind of weird at the same time. I don't know. Anyway, I think it has to do with the Ryzen chip probably having a little bit lower, a little bit smaller die space and being a smaller nanometer. And then also, it just doesn't have as much surface area to transfer heat away. It's basically my understanding. So looking at our numbers, we're getting 55, 56 FPS, 34, 37 for our 1% lows. That's obviously going to be very playable and a good gaming experience. And this is a slower game where you probably could get away with actually playing at that FPS and having a great experience. Though I might, if I was playing on this, I might go for a little bit higher. My ideal gaming experience is probably 90 FPS in God of War. Above 90, it really doesn't matter that much. But it's just going to look a little bit better in terms of smoothness of the animations and everything if you're getting at least 90. So yeah, I would probably just tweak things around a little bit to boost FPS at least into the like 70-ish range, kind of. But it's certainly playable, all depending on how picky you are. So moving into Hogwarts Legacy, I've already switched the settings to be correct before the live stream. So we've got Hogwarts Legacy Last of Us, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and Witcher 3 for our last 4 games. And then we're going to move into a summary of everything about the laptop. So basically recapping everything we've discovered about this laptop so far. And it'll be just, I don't know. I think it's been an interesting discovery session for the Blade 15. Yeah. I'm just like kind of thinking through like everything that I would want to say in a recap. And there's a lot. I think there's a lot of like, there are pros to this laptop. It's just becomes a tough sale, I think, at its price point versus some of the more moderately priced competition, especially like the G14, Zephyrus, G16. Those laptops are in the same kind of ultra portable and somewhat premium category. Obviously, they don't match this laptop in terms of total premium level, in terms of build quality at least. I think that's kind of the main, I guess, downside to this laptop, is that it's just in terms of value for dollar, it's gonna be a struggle to like justify, I think, buying this one over the Blade 16. Like if you're gonna spend like almost $3,000 on a laptop, I would say get the Blade 16. And then at the same time, if you're gonna spend less money, you want to save money and get more performance, then like the RTX 4080 G14 is going to give you way more performance and not be VRAM limited. And I don't know why they don't offer a 4080 and 4090 version of the Blade 15. Like they offered it in previous generations, and I guess I'll have to make an updated pinned comment because I'm going to ask Razer if they're going to offer a 4080 or 4090 version of this. Because honestly, like that's probably the version I would more recommend. That said, if you were just going to get a 4060 version of the Blade 16, then yeah, this is a great option compared to the Blade 16 in that scenario, but it certainly isn't expensive for what you're paying for. So let me just make sure that our settings are correct so we don't have to redo it. But okay, so we're in DLSS on quality. Frame generation is enabled. Frame rate is on uncapped. Ultra settings, everything's on low. Oh, ray tracing is still disabled. Okay, so that's why we were getting really good FPS. Because I was like, this FPS seems a little bit high for the settings that we're supposed to be on. So ray tracing is now enabled, and we're going to have to restart the game. So we're going to go ahead and let the game start up again. It only sucks restarting Hogwarts because it has to rebuild the shaders when you first open it, and it takes a little bit while. Manfred says, I just got my ROG G18 4080 a couple hours ago, and it's such an upgrade from my 1070 desktop. I appreciate your reviews and the live unboxings. It really helped me make my choice. Thanks, man. That's what I'm here for, man. I'm here to be as helpful as I possibly can. So, and to me, that means that I don't always recommend every laptop I review, right? Like that's like I see some reviewers, like, I kid you not, some reviewers are like, this laptop's amazing. And I'm like, no, it's not. Like, why are you recommending this? It is not a good value. It's not anything special. It's overpriced, or it's got like terrible blah, 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 or it's got a huge flaw on it. And it's like, yeah. I try to always be real, and I hope you guys can see that when I do my reviews. So, yeah. What's up, E-Ray? Welcome to the stream. We are chilling. Right now, we have 4 more games to benchmark, and then the summary. So, probably about a half hour left in the live stream, approximately, if I were to guess. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah. All right. We are loaded in. So we have ray tracing enabled now, which is going to make it way harder. It's going to make it way harder to run. We were getting 90 something FPS with ray tracing disabled. And on now that we have ray tracing enabled, we're in the 70s, it looks like, 60s. So we basically, you know, when you disable ray tracing, you get like 50% more FPS. Basically is what we're looking at. So I'm going to restart this. I'm just kind of running through. We're going to go back. So again, we're using frame generation to reach this kind of FPS level. And generally speaking, I would not advise using frame generation when you're only getting 60 FPS. You would really want to use DLSS, probably set that down to balanced probably, at least. And maybe even disable ray tracing if you want. It's kind of the result of going with a lower end GPU with the RTX 4060. You may have to disable ray tracing in some games, or even lower the entire resolution because of the VRAM limitations. And this game, we're definitely running into VRAM limitations with those big stutters. Only 8 FPS for our 1% lows, 56 for our average, which is, you know, that's going to be very playable. Again, frame generation enabled, going to have more artifacting and glitching. So I would probably drop, you know, if you were just 56 and 8, right, is what we got. If we do a quick, let's just try going DLSS to performance and just see what we get. All right. Notice the moment I set it DLS to performance, look at our VRAM usage. Our VRAM usage went to 6.2 gigs, which is so much better. And now I'm going to reset our FPS, and let's see if our 1% lows are any better. I mean, there's a lot of NPCs here, so it might not. Our stutters may not be just because of all the textures loading in and out. But once the textures are all loaded in, I would hope that our 1% lows get a bit better. So I'm going to reset it again and kind of move around. See, now we're getting 72 and 41. This is a much better gaming experience setting DLSS to balanced mode. Though I would say we are getting, like, I don't know, only 72 FPS, still not ideal for frame generation. You really want a few more FPS if you want to prevent, like, I'm just seeing some artifacting right here around the cape. So it just depends on how much artifacting you're willing to put up with. But, you know, 72, 37, much better, right? So that's I mean, a lot better experience overall in Hogwarts if you just drop DLSS down. Let's move into Last of Us Part 1. Don says they don't mention cons. Yeah, some reviewers are just there to promote a product, it seems like, you know. So I think it's important to have a nice balanced you got to be nice and balanced when you talk about a product. What are the pros, what are the cons, and be realistic too. I try, at least my goal is to always be realistic in terms of, like, when there is a con, why might the con be there? Is there a reason? Is there a drawback of that machine? You know, because, you know, maybe it's got, you know, it's extra thin, and you got to judge it based on thinness and compare it versus the thinness of other laptops that are comparably thin, and not just, you know, I see some people compare thin laptops versus really thick laptops, and I'm like, that's also not very fair. So you gotta find the right balance. So we're gonna do a new game. We do not have all of the shaders fully done. This makes it take a long time to load the match, or the map is basically what I've seen. That's probably the biggest difference, but it also may cause a little bit of artifact glitching and stuff like that too. and may impact performance. But I basically have done almost all my tests with shaders being loading still, so it should still be a fairly fair test between the laptops. Though Last of Us obviously would perform a little better if all the shaders were completely done. So. Don, you are asking, is it quiet on auto fan mode? That's a good question. I have not tested auto fan mode. I'm sure if it is quieter in auto fan mode, I'm sure it's going to really impact the performance of the machine a lot, right? So, but that's a very good question, and I need to test that. In one of these games, I need to try switching it to auto fan mode. We could do that in Last of Us here if we like. I think that would be pretty interesting, actually. So notice that when I was loading into this game, we were setting the settings and everything. We set everything to ultra. Except textures. We set those to medium. Right now, we're at 7.5 gigs on the VRAM, and we're just loading in. I'm not sure if medium at QHD is actually going to be enough, but I forgot to also change our... We need to set DLSS to... Let's do... I guess we got to do borderless window. Let's do DLSS to quality. Here we go. Okay, so DLSS on quality. We are very GPU bound, 100% GPU utilization, 70 degrees on that GPU, 76 on the CPU, looking really good in terms of balancing the performance and having a good gaming experience at 73 FPS, 42 for our 1% low. Keep in mind there is no frame generation, so 71 FPS looks really good and will play really well, especially if you can keep that 1% low above 30. I think this is going to be a really good gaming experience in Last of Us. Overall, obviously, I still, being a zombie shooter game, I would still prefer to have over 90. So I would probably still be fiddling with the settings, changing DLSS maybe down to balanced or performance mode, or maybe considering lowering some of the shadows and post-processing effects down a little bit more. But overall, this is a very, very good, all-around experience. Let's go ahead and I'm gonna let this go a little bit more so we have some side-by-side comparison footage for a comparison video, but then we are going to switch into auto fan mode. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and switch this into auto fan mode now. So we're gonna go to balanced, auto, and let's take a listen to the fans as they disappear. Ooh, that's much quieter. So notice that our CPU TDP went down significantly. We're only at 22, 24, 23 watts, 90 watts on the GPU in auto mode. Wow, it is so quiet. I'm resetting the FPS counter. It is so quiet, and our temperatures are still really good. So if I were to do a ambient audio test now, let's see what we get. See if I can get our decibel meter to read for a moment. Wow, 45 decibels. Whoo, that is good. So our ambient audio in the room is like 42 decibels. So that's only 3 decibels more than the ambient audio. It's very minimal. That is very impressive. I am pretty blown away actually right now. I was thinking that we were going to have way worse temperatures or wattage levels with the fan noise being this quiet. You know, and if you're playing with audio on, I just turned on the audio. There's not much audio right now. Let's see if I can get some audio in the next room. Like, this is going to be a good ambient audio experience for sure if you're after something that has low fan noise with good speakers.
Somehow connected to the nationwide
Where the heck
pandemic.
are you?
We've received reports that victims afflicted with the infection show
That's
signs of
nearby.
increased aggression and there seems to be some commotion coming from the...
Oh. Awesome. So, very good. Ambient audio is on point for the Blade 15. I'm impressed. Shadow of the Tomb Raider, let's go. LSP, so how about the Blade 16 or 18 in the 40s? All expensive, I know. Yeah, so the Blade 18 has excellent ambient audio performance as well. Like you have really high-end levels of performance with the Blade 18, while at the same time, it's really impressive levels of performance while it's being very quiet. And the speakers are so good on the Blade 18. It's just like you almost don't hear the laptop fans at all in auto mode when you have the speakers turned up to max. And the speakers are such high quality. It's just like it's like a whole portable gaming experience in a laptop, I think, for the Blade 18. So we are in QHD, DLSS sound quality, ray tracing set to ultra. And we're going to run the benchmark. Everything else is set to ultra. King Dragon says, would you switch your Blade 18 to a Legion 9, considering it has all the premium features the old Legion 7 had? Maybe. I'd have to actually see the pricing and how everything shaked out, but it's also like the hassle of switching your laptop once you've picked one. It's a bit of a hassle switching it, but... Okay, so let's see what we get in Shadow of the Tomb Raider is a memory-sensitive game. You do have to have a good CPU to run it at max settings, but since we are in QHD resolution, it tends to be a bit more GPU bound than 1080p. Now, notice that we're at 98% GPU utilization here and 7.7 gigs of VRAM utilized. So we're pushing the limits of our VRAM utilization. And right now, we're not really stuttering much at all, which is good. We're not running into like 1% low awfulness or something. We're loading into a new scene, and I guess I'll just go ahead and reset it at each scene so we can see if our 1% lows are stuttering. We are running into 1% stutters right there. Down to 10 FPS there with our 1% stutters just moving around, which is not good. Again, RTX 4060, 8 gigs of VRAM, QHD. Ultra texture settings is not going to be possible. You're going to need to turn the texture settings on Ultra down some more. Yeah, the Legion 9 is just a rumor. I don't think it's actually even really a rumor. It's just like a made-up fairy tale that some people were talking about. Sadly, I wish the Legion 9, which would be like an 18-inch version of the Legion 7, it would be awesome. I think they would probably do a really good job and knock that laptop out of the ballpark. It'd probably be really awesome. So 7.5 gigs of VRAM right now. Definitely running into VRAM limitations. So far, though, no stutters. We'll see as we turn the camera down onto the town. Are we going to have any 1% low limitations? We might. But right now, I think we're just like straddling the edge of VRAM, all the VRAM being enough. So if you want ultra settings in your textures, 8 gigs of VRAM, obviously not enough. So interesting. Overall, our temperatures are really good. We're getting good GPU utilization. Our 1% lows in this scene is awesome. Our CPU utilization is good. Like or at least our temperatures and wattage are in a reasonable level. Like we're getting good enough CPU bandwidth to push the GPU to 100%, which makes sense because we're at QHD resolution. Let's see what we get for our overall average. 83 FPS for our overall average, which is obviously going to be very playable, but in certain scenarios, you're probably going to want to lower the textures down so you don't stutter in Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Okay, so moving on. We're into our last game now, The Witcher 3. The Witcher 3 recently went through an overhaul where they changed, they added frame generation and DLSS 3 support. And of course, ray tracing as well. So Witcher 3 being one of the greatest games of all time, I think. I haven't played it all the way through yet. It is on my to-do list. I played, I don't know, like a quarter of it, and it was really good. It's just, I got lost in the weeds with some of the puzzles being buggy. Okay, so display resolution needs to be max, full screen, VSync off. Wow, everything is wrong here. Like literally I had to change like every setting almost. Okay, and graphics, we're doing ray tracing on ultra and then DLSS to quality. All right. I don't know if it actually took that. It kind of gets buggy sometimes, so I want to make sure that it's correct. Okay, it's set to correct now. So ray tracing on ultra, DLSS on quality. Basically, the game settings are all maxed out to the maximum possible, so you can obviously tweak them more to get a better FPS if you wanted a higher FPS target. But let's see what we get at QHD resolution on the Blade 15. King Dragon, I probably wouldn't read into the model numbers too much. That's yeah, probably not really very relevant. Okay, so The Witcher 3 is a game notorious for kind of glitchiness as you load into different areas of the game. Even on the highest end hardware, it'll still be glitchy when you switch to a new area of the game. So that's why I'm kind of running around and looking which direction. And then once we get up here, we'll be ready to go. All the areas of the game will hopefully be loaded in, and it'll be much smoother, hopefully. Okay, so here we go. .52 FPS with 14 for a 1% low. Our 1% low being rather low. 23 is a bit better. Still probably not ideal. 27 is even better. .60 FPS for our average. That's going to be very playable. Though in The Witcher 3, I'd probably go for a 90 FPS target, so I would probably change some settings, just a little bit lower. Here, 61 FPS, 37 for our 1% low. Very nice performance overall in The Witcher 3. You're probably going to want to change the settings down just a little bit from ultra settings, but overall, excellent. And we're not running into frame, our VRAM is just enough. 6.8 gigs in The Witcher 3 is just enough. So, excellent. Okay, it's time. We are going to do a summary of everything we've found out about the Blade 15. Let's do it. All right. Ports. We haven't talked about ports. Let's talk about ports real quick. That'll be part of the overview. All right, so let's talk ports. It's got the same ports as the Blade 16. On the right side, we have a UHS 2 SD card slot on right here. We have a Thunderbolt 4. We have one Thunderbolt 4 and one USB-C. I believe this is the USB-C, and the Thunderbolt 4 is on the left side. And then we've got a USB-A, HDMI 2.1, and then a Kensington lock port right there. Rotating the laptop around to the other side, we've got switch this a bit better. There you go. We've got a headphone port 2-in-1, Thunderbolt 4, two USB 3.2 Gen 2s, I think, and then we have a reversible power port, so you can put the power port in either direction, though if you put it in this way, it's going to block this USB-A, which is not a good, so really you want to do it facing backwards typically. Overall, the ports on this laptop are very good, especially for a thin and lighter laptop. It is actually excellent, probably one of the best port selections that you can get in a thinner, lighter laptop. So let's talk summary. Do I like the Blade 15? Do I recommend you spend your life savings on it? Let's find out. Here we go. Okay, maybe it's not so expensive that you have to spend your life savings on it, but it is not a cheap laptop. And you definitely, like, even if you're buying a Razer product, usually you want to still feel like you're getting your money's worth for the product, right? So this is going to be a summary of everything we've found out in the last approximately 4 hours of live stream. So let's talk shop. All right, so overall summary. This laptop is exceptionally thin, though it's not as light as the lighter laptops. And that puts it in a weird situation where you get a little bit more screen real estate, a little bit bigger screen while still maintaining the thinness and still being 4.4 pounds. The touchpad is excellent for the overall laptop size. I actually like it a little better than the Blade 18 touchpad. It's the right size. It's got a little bit of clickiness to it. We also have an excellent keyboard layout. I wish the arrows were full size though. The backlight on the keyboard is truly excellent. The body itself is extremely rigid and feels just like a tank. Like literally it feels super solid. It's a unibody aluminum chassis and I love it. It's super good. Overall, the one downside to this is that it's only 16:9 aspect ratio instead of 16:10, which is one of the biggest changes going to the Blade 16. You get a little more screen real estate, a little bit deeper chassis, and quite a bit thicker on the Blade 16. But the Blade 16 has two major advantages. You can either get a mini LED display that can go up to 1,000 nits brightness, or I think 1,100 peak brightness, which is insane. Much better contrast ratio, and it's a 4K display as well. So, and it can drop down to 1080p 240 hertz, so you can still get 240 hertz. That said, if I was going Blade 16, I'd probably buy a QHD 240 hertz. That's probably what I would go. I went Blade 18 because the chassis on the Blade 16 also gets warm. The Blade 15 chassis gets exceptionally warm, very warm, even warmer than the Blade 16. The Blade 16 got warm. This got very warm on the wrist rest. If you're sensitive to that, that's probably one of the biggest cons to buying this laptop. Like this thing can game, it can game really well in a lot of games, but the 8 gigs of VRAM is a huge limitation factor to this laptop, and you need to be aware of it. You're going to either have to change DLSS down to like balanced or performance mode pretty often in the newer titles, or you're going to have to just lower the whole resolution down a notch in some of the newer titles. Like going down to 1080p instead of QHD, which kind of sucks, right? So going with a RTX 4080 or 4090 with 12 gigs of VRAM, or going to a RTX 3080, for example, with 16 gigs of VRAM, the 4090, of course, having 16 gigs of VRAM as well, you're not going to be nearly as VRAM limited, and you're getting more than double the performance if you go with a 4090 compared to this, and you're not paying double. So if you end up going with a 4090 laptop instead, obviously, if you want something that's like the best value for your money, going with something like the Omen 17 or the Legion Pro 7i, those ones are probably some of the best value laptops currently on the market, the Scar 16 being a great value. But all of those laptops are much thicker, much beefier. And this Blade 15 really caters to someone who's looking for a portable premium experience that's just so thin. Like, look at how thin this thing is. It's exceptionally thin. It's like a MacBook, in my opinion, in terms of its thinness. So if something that is ultra portable really appeals to you, and this thing has enough power for what you need, it's still a decent option, I think. It's not like it's an awful option. The biggest problem with this laptop is just the competition, because the Zephyrus G14, the ZenBook 14, the ZenBook 14 has an OLED with up to an RTX 4070, also being very ultra portable and premium. The Zephyrus G16 being about the same size and about the same weight, while still being way cheaper. Like the 4060 version of the Zephyrus G14 either runs $1449 for a 1080p screen, or I think it's up to like $1799 for the QHD screen, which is just going to be like way more value than this machine at $2499. So what do you get when you buy this one versus those ones? Well, you get a more portable power adapter. You get actually a lower quality display. Like the display is not quite as bright or as nits brightness as those other laptops. Like all of those laptops are going to like 500 nits or at least 350 plus. And this only got 290 nits, but this has excellent color gamut. Those other laptops also have really good color gamut. A lot of pros and cons going back and forth here, but essentially what I'm saying is, like, my recommendation in terms of performance per dollar is you either go a little bit cheaper than the Blade 15. And I guess the only scenario where I see the Blade 15 being the best option for the user is, number one, you're a Razer fan, you're a fan of Razer products. Number two, you want something that's ultra premium. Like you don't want to settle for a plastic chassis or like some like semi magnesium. Like you want aluminum, you want it to feel like a tank. Razer is one of your only options if you want something along those lines. And you want it to be super thin. Like if you're planning to get an RTX 4060 or 4070 anyway, I would say get the Blade 15 over the Razer Blade 16, because this thing is thinner, it's more portable, it has the same ports, it's the same keyboard, the same quality trackpad. The only difference really being the display options on the Blade 16 being 16:10 and potentially better just quality display, but in a much thicker chassis. And that thicker chassis is not, the Blade 16 thicker chassis is not really going to be going to give you much more performance when you're looking at a 4060, because the 4060 is just doesn't need that much wattage, and this thing can supply the juice to the 4060 just fine. So your performance difference between a Blade 16 and Blade 15 is not going to be that big, and this thing's just going to be more portable. So that's the only scenario where I'm like, yes, this is like money in the bag, someone should buy this. But for most people that are willing to compromise a little bit on build quality, they're going to get way more bang for the buck going with the Zephyrus G16, the Zephyrus M16, the Zephyrus G14. Like if you want something that's more powerful and more portable than this, go with something like the Zephyrus G14 RTX 4080 or 4090 with a mini LED display. Not only will the display be brighter, the color gamut will be about the same, contrast will be better, It'll be more portable, and it'll be like a 4090 version of that will be at least 60 to 70, 80% more powerful than this laptop. So it seems like a no-brainer for me to recommend the G14 over this one in that scenario for the people that are willing to compromise on the build quality. That said, like the speakers on this were pretty dang good. The color gamut on the display is very good. It's very enjoyable. You have spatial audio on this laptop that you don't have on other laptops. The port selection on this is better than the G14 and many of the other ultra portables. So if that's very important to you, really keep that in mind, because that does make a big difference to a lot of end users, what ports you can hook up. Because the Zephyrus G14, no Thunderbolt 4 support, no full-size SD card reader. That is a deal breaker for a lot of video editors and people that need to work with a lot of camera equipment and media. So yeah, overall, it's just, in general, if you have the money, swing up to a Blade 16 4080 if you can. If you're really limited on your budget and you really want a Razer and you want something more portable, then yeah, I think the Blade 15 could be a recommendation option over the Blade 16. If you're going to go with a 4060 anyway. And yeah, so those are all the pros and cons. In terms of gaming performance, this thing will handle most games just fine. You just got to be aware of VRAM limitations and that you're going to have to turn textures down fairly often. And so it's not a no compromise gaming laptop. There's some gaming laptops like the 4080 and 4090 laptops. It's pretty much no compromise. You can play ultra settings, default, out of the box in every single game and have a great gaming experience. You're not going to be able to do that on a 4050, 4060, or 4070 because of the 8 gigs of VRAM. So that's the main thing you got to be aware of when you go into this purchase. And I really wish Razer had offered a 4080 and 4090 version of this for people that want a higher powered, thinner laptop, because that's really where I think this would shine a little bit better. And also I wish that they offered an i9-13980HX processor in this laptop as well, because that higher end part would also put a lot more performance per pound in this package. And as it is, the performance is not bad on this machine. You're going to be able to play games. You're going to be able to video edit. You're going to be able to do all those things, but you can just do all those things much better on the i9-HX series processor, not the H. The H series does not have all the extra cores. The HX processor does. So look at the very end of the processor, and if it has an H on the end, know that it's a lot less cores on that processor than the HX. And the HX processors can also be undervolted, and that's a big difference in terms of performance, at least a 10 to 20% performance gain when you undervolt. So very important to keep all those things in mind. And the Blade 15, it's not an instant recommendation for me. I mean, I'll give it like a thumbs up in the sense that like you can get it, it'll play games, it'll do everything you need, and it's not an awful laptop. Like it's not terrible. But the temperatures on the chassis are a bit uncomfortable. The VRAM limitations are a big drawback. And it's a very hefty price tag that makes it not as compelling of a purchase option for anyone that's on a budget. So, and that's the same thing's true on a Blade 16 for a 4060, 4070, 4050. So nothing really changes there between the Blade 15 and 16, but it's just more about what the user, are you on a budget? Do you want to save some money and you want to have just as much performance? Or are you the kind of person that's like, I want the ultra premium experience. I don't mind paying $800 or $1,000 more for it, even if I get less performance for the same amount of dollars. So that's my summary of the Blade 15. It's not awful. It's not amazing. It's a pretty decent laptop, and it'll definitely get the job done. It'll play games pretty dang well, and it comes with a lot of premium features that a lot of people really appreciate. It's just not my top recommendation in the price segment, nowhere near my top recommendation in the price segment. But I probably would recommend it over the Blade 16 4060, probably, because it's cheaper and it's much more portable, and it'll be the same performance roughly. So yeah. King Dragon says, would get Ryzen for rendering workloads. I think that that's a decent option, but I think Intel CPUs are also pretty good. And especially for anyone that needs to use Intel QuickSync, I think that Intel CPUs make more sense than Ryzen, because the video encoder for Intel chips are much better. So it depends on what you're using. Like if you're using Premiere or like Handbrake or something, you're going to render clips a lot faster with Intel. But it just depends on the situation, what your application is, and whether you can use NVIDIA GPU encoders or Intel or Ryzen GPU encoders. Depends on the application and how it's optimized. But in general, it just varies from application to application. It's very specific in the scenario. So you got to do a little bit of research on your specific software as far as which CPU or GPU. But in general, more cores, almost always faster. So the i9 or the Ryzen chips with 16 cores, 32 threads, those are the chips that are going to be the best for rendering workloads. And then, of course, the RTX 4080 and 4090 having twice as many media encoders, much better than a 4050, 4060, or 4070. So, yeah. That's my summary of the Blade 15. I think I covered everything you need to know. Battery life-wise, I would expect pretty good battery life on this thing. You're gonna get in the 6 to 10 hour range, I think, depending on how you optimize and how you use the battery. Obviously, if you play video games, you're more like 2 hours. If you're being very good and optimized with all of the brightness down and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth off, and you're just typing in a Word document, probably closer to the 8 to 10 hour range. So, but web browsing is probably more like 6 to 8 hours, maybe 10 if you really are like optimized. But 80 watt hours with a i7 chip should be pretty dang good on the battery life with this lower brightness screen as well. So that's it for my unboxing review of the Razer Blade 15. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next one. Brandon out. Huzzah.